Greeting fellow Taoist, my cultivation level is just a hair's breadth away from a major breakthrough. Please click the subscribe button to help me reach the next realm sooner. Thank you. Now let's back to our video. Immediately following the crimson vermilion bird and the giant blue wheel came a massive white seal, an azure jade bracelet, and a crimson bead, all of which were hurtling through the air from different directions. The other three golden immortals of the Dawnfall sect had unleashed attacks of their own, and of course, they were all directed at the white light barrier as well. It was clear that everyone was determined to kill Xiao Jinhen, and this barrage of attacks was significantly more formidable than the one that had been unleashed against the restriction at the entrance of the High Zenith Palace. A string of earth-shattering booms rang out, and the white light barrier warped and trembled violently as the spiritual light on its surface quickly faded. However, for some reason, it had become several times more resilient than before, and it displayed no signs of breaking. Not only that, but countless white runes had appeared over the light barrier, and as these runes began to flash, countless specks of spiritual light converged within the surrounding spirit domain before surging into the light barrier, and spiritual light radiating from it began to quickly recover again. Everyone's expressions changed once again upon seeing this, and Qi Tianxiao's brows furrowed slightly as he made a hand seal, upon which the giant gray python sprang forth before wrapping itself several times around the white light barrier. Countless gray runes emerged over its body, and clouds of liquid-like gray mist spilled out to envelop the entire white light barrier. Due to the corrosive effects of the gray mist, the recovery of the light barrier wasn't instantly slowed, but the rate of erosion was lagging far behind the rate of recovery, so the detrimental effect was virtually negligible. A hint of urgency appeared in Qi Tianxiao's eyes upon seeing this, and he was just about to call upon everyone to attack again when a resounding boom suddenly rang out from the ground below. Immediately thereafter, countless shards of ice were sent flying in all directions as a giant golden beetle that was several hundred feet in size flew out. Qi Tianxiao faltered slightly at the sight of the golden beetle, which spread open its legs to grab onto the white light barrier before hacking viciously at it with its sharp claws. The giant gray python was instantly sliced into several pieces by the gray beetle, and its body disintegrated into a vast cloud of gray mist amid an anguished wail. Qi Tianxiao was astonished to see this. Even though the gray python had been formed by gray mist, it was interspersed with his law threads, so it possessed just as much structural integrity as the average immortal treasure, yet the golden beetle had managed to tear it apart with ease. Everyone else was also completely rooted to the spot, and they had no idea whether this golden beetle was friend or foe. But Feng Tiandu's eyes lit up slightly as he caught sight of the golden beetle while still locked in battle against the white domain spirit. The golden beetle paid no heed to any of the golden immortals present as it opened its mouth up wide, and a pair of scythe-like sharp teeth sprang out of its mouth. These two teeth were different from its other golden teeth in that their coloration was far lighter, and they were also slightly translucent. The golden beetle chomped down onto the white light barrier with ferocious might, and its two sharp fangs were able to tear a pair of long gashes into the light barrier with ease, even though it had managed to withstand such a ferocious barrage of attacks from the other golden immortals. Immediately thereafter, the white light barrier exploded with a dull thump to reveal the 5 stone pillars inside. The stone pillars were riddled with countless complex white patterns that extended all the way down onto the ground, where they intertwined to form an extremely complex white formation. At this moment, Xiao Jinhen was seated at the center of the formation, and he was just as flabbergasted as everyone else. "How dare you use your ice to freeze me?" The golden beetle yelled in the voice of a little girl, then pounced directly at Xiao Jinhen as a ball of golden light. "Is this a gold-devouring immortal, But that's impossible. A perplexed look flashed through Xiao Jinhen's eyes, and he remained seated as he made a hand seal. The white formation around him instantly began to glow brightly as a thick streak of white light emerged, then instantly transformed into a sharp sword that shot forth like lightning to strike the ball of golden light. A loud clang rang out as the ball of golden light was sent flying, and it faded to reveal the golden beetle tumbling end over end through the air. However, after the golden beetle steadied itself, it was revealed that only a faint white mark had appeared on its golden shell. In the next instant, the golden beetle began to rapidly shrink, reducing itself to only the size of a millstone, following which it pounced at Xiao Jinhen once again, this time reaching around twice the speed as during its previous attack. However, as soon as it drew close to the stone pillars, the formation on the ground lit up once again, and another streak of sword light shot forth to strike it with unerring accuracy, sending it flying back through the air once again. The golden beetle was becoming even more enraged, and it was just about to fly forward once again when it suddenly stopped in its tracks and took a glance in a certain direction, following which it abruptly vanished from the spot. Xiao Jinhen was rather taken aback to see this, and before he could do anything else, Qi Tianxiao and the others descended out of the sky to surround him and the 5 stone pillars. Everyone took a collective glance at the spot where the golden beetle had been just a moment ago, and a hint of bewilderment flashed through their eyes, but they quickly turned their attention back to Xiao Jinhen. "It looks like even the heavens are on our side. You should surrender and accept your fate, Palace Master Xiao," Qi Tianxiao declared as he made a hand seal, and his gray jade scepter instantly began to glow radiantly while releasing a cloud of dense gray mist. A giant gray dragon took shape around the gray scepter, and it pounced at Xiao Jinhen with almighty power. All of the other golden immortals were also attacking Xiao Jinhen from all directions with their immortal treasures, and in response, Xiao Jinhen began to chant an incantation while flicking his fingers through the air in rapid succession, sending a string of incantation seals flying into the 5 stone pillars around him. The attacks unleashed by Qi Tianxiao and the others had only just drawn close to the stone pillars when the white formation on the ground began to revolve rapidly, and around a dozen thick beams of white light shot out of the formation in all directions. A string of resounding booms rang out as all of the oncoming attacks were sent flying or kept at bay, and not even a single one of them was able to slip through the cracks, much to the dismay of the surrounding golden immortals. Having observed the white formation in action from above, the golden immortals had thought that Xiao Jinhen was actively controlling the formation to ward off the golden beetle, but it seemed that this wasn't actually the case. Instead, the formation possessed the ability to sense attacks and react accordingly. Right at this moment, the light emanating from the formation suddenly began to fluctuate erratically in brightness, while the patterns on the 5 stone pillars were rapidly becoming brighter. Radiant white light erupted out of the 5 stone pillars, then converged to form a thick pillar of white light that shot forth straight up toward the heavens. The entire white spirit domain shuddered as countless specks of spiritual light converged from all directions, while the pillar of white light grew brighter and brighter. 7 or 8 balls of white light appeared within the pillar of white light in a flash, and they began to rapidly expand. Feng Tiandu's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and he hurriedly yelled, "Stop him! He's about to conjure up another domain spirit. You have to destroy these stone pillars before that." While it was true that he could hold his own against this formidable domain spirit, he wasn't going to be able to completely destroy it anytime soon, and if even more domain spirits were to be conjured up, then everyone would be well and truly in a dire situation. Upon hearing Feng Tiandu's urgent call, Qi Tianxiao and the others hurriedly summoned a wide formation of immortal treasures and high-grade talismans to attack the 5 stone pillars, but Xiao Jinhen merely made a hand seal with a derisive sneer on his face. The white formation flashed momentarily before releasing several dozen more beams of white light to keep all of the oncoming attacks at bay once again. An urgent look appeared in Qi Tianxiao's eyes as he opened his mouth to expel a ball of blood essence, which vanished into his gray jade scepter. The scepter immediately began to glow brightly, and the serpentine head on its tip detached itself from the rest of the scepter and flew out to transform into a giant gray serpentine head. The serpentine head opened its cavernous mouth to devour the white light standing in its path, and with the obstacle eliminated, the jade scepter was able to fly forward as a streak of gray light, appearing in front of one of the stone pillars in a flash. In the blink of an eye, the jade scepter transformed into a giant gray blade, the edge of which was etched with countless gray runes. The blade was giving off a burst of intensely corrosive law power as it struck the white stone pillar with tremendous force, and a hint of surprise flashed through Xiao Jinhen's eyes upon seeing this, but he made no attempt to stop the attack. The gray blade exploded violently like a wave crashing against the rocks, and the jade scepter re-emerged, but the spiritual light on its surface had dimmed significantly, and it was sent flying back through the air. As for the stone pillar, it merely swayed slightly before immediately stabilizing itself again. "Impossible," Qi Tianxiao exclaimed. This didn't seem like a very remarkable transformation from the jade scepter, but it was actually its most powerful attacking form, yet it hadn't even managed to leave a mark on the stone pillar. The stone pillars were extraordinarily resilient, and it was no wonder that Xiao Jinhen wasn't concerned about them at all. At the same time, a resounding boom rang out from the other side. As it turned out, a thin streak of golden light that resembled a blade had erupted out of the elderly woman's golden cane, and it had somehow managed to bypass the white formation to strike another one of the stone pillars. However, just like before, this pillar also only swayed slightly before steadying itself again, and it remained completely unscathed. The elderly woman and Qi Tianxiao exchanged a glance upon seeing this, and both of them could see their own astonishment mirrored in each other's eyes. A cold sneer appeared on Xiao Jinhen's face as he continued to make hand seals, and the light radiating from the white formation grew brighter and brighter, while streaks of white light converged from all parts of the spirit domain, before surging into the balls of light within the pillar of white light. Limbs and heads began to sprout out of the balls of light, and an ecstatic look appeared on Xiao Jinhen's face upon seeing this, as he began to make hand seals with even greater urgency. Right at this moment, things took a completely unexpected turn. All of a sudden, golden light flashed from the ground beneath one of the white stone pillars, and a golden beetle shot out of the ice before pouncing at the nearest pillar. A thick beam of white light shot out of the white formation, transforming into a white sword in the blink of an eye as it hurtled toward the golden beetle at an incredible speed. The golden beetle opened its mouth to release a ball of golden light, which transformed into a golden vortex, and the white sword was instantly sucked into the vortex, vanishing out of sight in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, the golden beetle continued onward without pause, appearing in front of the white stone pillar in a flash, then instantly swelled to several hundred feet in size before grabbing onto the pillar with its legs. It then opened its mouth again, and the pair of scythe-like fangs shot out before it chomped down viciously onto the stone pillar. In the face of its peerlessly sharp fangs, the stone pillar was made to look extremely fragile, and a loud crack rang out as a mark was bitten onto it. Xiao Jinhen's expression changed drastically upon seeing this, and he immediately swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a burst of white light that vanished into the stone pillar in a flash. The pillar instantly began to glow radiantly, and a translucent membrane much like Han Li's true extreme film appeared on its surface, giving it an indestructible appearance. However, the golden beetle's fangs were able to pierce through this membrane with ease before sinking into the stone pillar. A crack instantly appeared on the pillar's surface, and the pillar of white light above it immediately began to ripple violently, while the balls of light inside also began to tremble in an unstable fashion. A furious look appeared on Xiao Jinhen's face upon seeing this, and he sprang to his feet before sweeping both sleeves through the air. The white formation around him began to buzz and revolve rapidly as a thick beam of white light, that was looking rather shaky and unstable, was sent flying toward the golden beetle. At the same time, two streaks of translucent white light shot out of Xiao Jinhen's hands, and they were revealed to be a pair of long white halberds that were giving off a formidable glacial aura and tremendous law power fluctuations. As the pair of halberds hurtled through the air, they swelled drastically in size, transforming into two streaks of white light, and they reached the golden beetle before the beam of white light did. Two metallic clangs rang out as the pair of halberds crashed down onto the golden beetle's neck, sending sparks flying in all directions. A pair of long white marks appeared on the golden beetle's neck, and the skin there seemed to have split open slightly, but not a single drop of blood flowed out. Immediately thereafter, the golden beetle reared up to devour the pair of white halberds, crunching on them a few times before promptly swallowing them. A burst of golden light then surged over its body, and the tiny gashes on its neck were quickly healed. All of this had taken place in the blink of an eye, and Qi Tianxiao and the other golden immortals were naturally ecstatic to see this. A golden immortal stage gold devouring immortal. How is this possible? Xiao Jinhen felt as if he had been thrust into a nightmare. Those two halberds were a prized trump card of his that he had refrained from unleashing upon to this point, and they were capable of tearing through virtually anything, yet not were they barely able to scratch the shell of the golden beetle. They had been eaten. Immediately thereafter, the thick beam of white light struck the golden beetle, and countless runes were flashing within the white light, giving off an immense glacial aura. A white ice mountain abruptly appeared out of thin air, freezing both the golden beetle and the white stone pillar within it. Despite this, the golden beetle didn't appear to have been affected at all, and it was able to quickly struggle free from the ice around it before continuing to sink its fangs into the stone pillar, rapidly widening the cracks that had already appeared on its surface. Before Xiao Jinhen had a chance to do anything else, the white stone pillar was snapped with a loud crack. With the destruction of the stone pillar, the white formation at the center of the pillars instantly dimmed slightly. The pillar of white light above the stone pillars also faded, and the balls of white light within it exploded immediately thereafter. The white light around Xiao Jinhen's body also shuddered violently, and his complexion paled significantly as he threw up a large mouthful of blood. This sequence of events also caused the white spirit domain that encompassed the entire valley to tremble and ripple while rapidly shrinking down to its original size. In fact, it was even weaker than before and looked as if it could disintegrate entirely at any moment. Qi Tianxiao and the others were ecstatic to see this, and three spirit domains, one gray and two red, instantly emerged, trapping Xiao Jinhen within them. At the same time, a series of immortal treasures were sent flying toward him from all directions. A hint of panic flashed through Xiao Jinhen's eyes as he hurriedly swept both sleeves through the air, and his spirit domain instantly shrank down even further, but as a result, it had become denser. At the same time, countless snowflakes began swirling around him, forming a white light barrier in the blink of an eye. The light barrier was only able to withstand the barrage of immortal treasures for a few seconds before it was shattered, but the immortal treasures were also sent flying back. Xiao Jinhen's complexion paled even further as he threw up another mouthful of blood. And his aura had also diminished significantly. However, there was no time for him to rest, and bright white light erupted out of his body as he shot back in retreat. Right at this moment, the space around him rippled, and around a dozen black chains shot out in a flash before wrapping themselves around him almost instantaneously. The white light around his body quickly faded, and he was instantly immobilized by the black chains. His aura was also completely restrained in the blink of an eye, and it was as if he had been reduced to a mere mortal. Immediately thereafter, Feng Tiandu appeared behind him in a flash. "Feng Tiandu, if you kill me, the heavenly court will be sure to hunt you down," Zhao Jinhen roared. Feng Tiandu paid no heed to those threats as he declared, "Looks like even the heavens are against you, Palace Master Zhao." He swept a sleeve through the air as he spoke, and a streak of translucent black light shot out of his hand before gliding over Zhao Jinhen's body. His expression instantly stiffened, and in the next instant, his entire body was split in half from head to toe, sending blood and entrails gushing down onto the ground. Right at this moment, a burst of white light shot out of his remains, and it was none other than his nascent soul. The nascent soul was completely unaffected by the three enemy spirit domains, as it fled the scene at an incredible speed, covering a distance of close to 10 kilometers in the blink of an eye. A cold sneer appeared on Feng Tiandu's face as he flicked a finger through the air, and a burst of spatial fluctuations emerged in front of Zhao Jinhen's nascent soul, following which a series of black chains appeared. It was as if the chains had already been set up there well in advance, and they intertwined with one another to form a large black net in the blink of an eye before sweeping toward the nascent soul. Formidable restrictive law power fluctuations were emanating from the black net, sealing the entire surrounding space in a radius of several hundred feet. Zhao Jinhen's nascent soul wore a grim expression as it opened its mouth to release a white bead. The white bead exploded to release an eruption of white light, which gave off a bone-chilling glacial aura. The black net of chains was slowed down significantly by the glacial aura, and a layer of white ice crystals appeared over its surface, while its restrictive law powers were also significantly diminished. The nascent soul took advantage of this brief opening to dart away to the side as a streak of white light, then continued to fly away into the distance. Feng Tiandu's expression darkened slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately shot forth in pursuit of the nascent soul as a streak of black light. If he were to allow Zhao Jinhen's nascent soul to get away, then the consequences would be catastrophic. Right at this moment, a streak of golden light flashed past up ahead, and Zhao Jinhen's nascent soul abruptly vanished into thin air. Feng Tiandu faltered slightly upon seeing this, and he stopped cold in his tracks before looking around to discover that the streak of golden light had stopped not far away from him. The golden light faded to reveal the golden beetle, which had already freed itself from the ice mountain and had shrunk down to roughly the size of a human head. Held in the golden beetle's mouth was none other than Zhao Jinhen's nascent soul, which was struggling with all its might, but in complete futility. "You froze me, and now I'm going to eat you, so we're even, Silver Beard," the golden beetle declared as a burst of golden light flew out of its mouth to suck in the nascent soul. The surrounding spirit domain of snow and ice flashed a few times before disintegrating, while the 5 stone pillars rapidly shrank down, reverting back to a set of pillars that were each only around 10 feet tall. Feng Tiandu faltered slightly at the sight of Zhao Jinhen's nascent soul being devoured, following which a hint of greed flashed through his eyes as he sized up the golden beetle. With a sweep of his sleeve, he released a burst of black light that swept up Zhao Jinhen's remains before delivering a white storage bracelet into his grasp. Meanwhile, the other golden immortals had all stowed away their immortal treasures, and were flying toward Feng Tiandu. The golden beetle was on the verge of being surrounded by these formidable golden immortals, but it didn't seem to have a care in the world as it swallowed Xiao Jinhin's nascent soul, then climbed back onto the toppled stone pillar and began munching on it once again. Qi Tianxiao took a glance at Feng Tiandu, then began to fly around in a covert fashion to get behind the golden beetle. Right at this moment, a streak of azure light suddenly flashed past, and a figure instantly appeared between Qi Tianxiao and the golden beetle. Qi Tianxiao immediately stopped in his tracks, and his brows furrowed slightly as he cast his gaze toward the figure that had just arrived on the scene. It was none other than Han Li in disguise, and upon spotting Han Li's arrival, Jin Tong reverted back into the form of a little girl, which was still holding the remnants of the stone pillar in her arms. Han Li took a glance at Qi Tianxiao, then turned to Jin Tong as he asked, "Has someone been picking on you, Jin Tong?" As he was speaking, he made no attempt to suppress his own aura, intentionally revealing the entirety of his mid-golden immortal stage cultivation base. "I just ate Silver Beard. That's what he gets for freezing me," Jin Tong replied as she licked her lips with her little tongue. All of the other golden immortals immediately stopped what they were doing, and instead of continuing to approach Jin Tong, they began sizing up her and Han Li with wary looks in their eyes. It had naturally already become apparent to them that this harmless-looking little girl was actually a gold-devouring immortal that possessed golden immortal stage power. None of them had ever heard of anyone from the northern glacial immortal region owning such a formidable gold-devouring immortal, and such a person was definitely not to be taken lightly. Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai were also quite startled by Han Li's sudden arrival, and it was clear that they had no idea how Han Li had become a golden immortal in just a few months, as well as where he had got this golden immortal stage gold-devouring immortal from. "Why are you so late, uncle?" Jin Tong complained with a displeased expression, completely unbothered by the sinister scrutiny she was receiving from the surrounding golden immortals. Han Li turned to her and gave her a subtle look as he said, "If you've had your fill, then take a rest." Jin Tong wasn't actually a clueless child, so she was naturally able to glean Han Li's intentions, and she pointed at the remnants of the formation as she said, "This is all mine. I'm still not done eating yet, so make sure no one else takes it." "I'll pack it all up for you to eat later," Han Li replied with a smile. "Fine," Jin Tong complied with a reluctant expression. With that, Han Li cast a string of incantation seals toward the 4.5 white stone pillars that were still standing, casually stowing the entire formation away right before everyone's eyes. Meanwhile, Jin Tong swept her gaze over Feng Tiandu and the others in a provocative manner, then said, "Make sure to call on me if you run into any other good treasures." After that, she shrank down into a tiny golden beetle amid a flash of golden light, then circled around in the air for a moment before landing on Han Li's left ring finger, fitting onto the finger like a golden ring, while everyone else looked on with mixed emotions. Just now, Xiao Jinhin was only an instant away from unleashing his ultimate trump card, which wasn't guaranteed to be able to completely turn the tide of the battle in his favor, but it would have definitely posed an immense challenge for everyone, and they would have all but certainly failed to strike him down. It was precisely due to the sudden arrival of this gold-devouring immortal that Xiao Jinhin's plans had been completely foiled, ultimately leading to his demise. In the wake of Xiao Jinhin's death, Han Li had suddenly arrived on the scene and casually subdued the gold-devouring immortal as its master, leading everyone to speculate about his identity. Feng Tiandu's expression darkened slightly as he began to size up Han Li, while all of the other Dawn Fall sect cultivators were also watching Han Li with a hint of wariness and enmity in their eyes. Meanwhile, the two golden immortals of the Southern Dawn race exchanged a puzzled glance with one another. Prior to entering the infernal frost immortal manor, they had interacted briefly with the cultivators of the True Flame sect, so they had some recollection of Han Li's current appearance. However, they recalled that back then, he had only been at the late True Immortal stage and hadn't displayed any remarkable traits, so how he had suddenly returned as a golden immortal. Right at this moment, Taoist Huyan suddenly approached Han Li as he asked, "Where did you go, Tianyu? You had me worried sick." A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as he made his way over to Taoist Huyan in a leisurely fashion, while everyone else looked on with surprise in their eyes. "My apologies, uncle. I was trapped in an underground palace earlier, and as soon as I got out, I noticed that something was happening here, so I came here right away," Han Li explained. On the surface, Taoist Huyan offered no response to this, but he was understandably raising questions to Han Li in secret through voice transmission. "What is going on, fellow Taoist Li? How did your cultivation base?" "Here I'll tell you the truth. I was trapped in an underground palace, only to re-emerge an instant later as a golden immortal. Do you believe me?" Han Li replied in a resigned voice. "Of course not," Taoist Huyan exclaimed. Meanwhile, Yun Nai was also communicating to Taoist Huyan through voice transmission. Perhaps he cultivated some type of reincarnation secret technique, and he concealed his own cultivation base in the past so that he could secure our sect's formless true axis scripture. There was naturally no way that anyone would believe such a story, and the enmity that had earlier been solely directed toward Han Li from Feng Tiandu, and the others had expanded to include Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai as well. Right at this moment, Aoyang Qiushan's trio suddenly approached Taoist Hu Yan as well, and it was clear that they were aware of his true identity. Perhaps they had chosen to side with Taoist Hu Yan as they had once been part of the same sect, or perhaps they were simply wary of the Dawnfall sect. In any case, their decision had completely changed the complexion of the situation, and a tense atmosphere descended upon the entire scene once again. A mocking sneer appeared on Feng Tiandu's face as he cast his gaze toward the two Southern Dawn race golden immortals, and among them, the elderly man turned to the elderly woman with an inquisitive expression, in response to which the latter shook her head, refusing to take either side. Right as the tension in the valley was beginning to build, a resounding boom suddenly rang out high up in the sky, and everyone immediately turned their attention upward to find that countless rays of golden light had converged up above, quickly forming an enormous golden cloud. Golden light was surging throughout the cloud, illuminating the entire sky with dazzling golden radiance, and tremendous energy fluctuations were sweeping out of the cloud, causing all of the world's origin chi in a radius of several dozen kilometers to churn incessantly. A burst of tremendous pressure came crashing down from above alongside a flash of blinding light, and everything was illuminated a bright golden color. This was a phenomenon that wasn't unfamiliar to Han Li, and his expression changed slightly as he turned to Taoist Hu Yan and said, "This is a pill tribulation. Could it be?" "That's right. This valley is most likely where the High Zenith Palace is situated, and that's where High Zenith pills are being refined. The arrival of the pill tribulation indicates that a critical stage has been reached in the pill refinement process," Taoist Hu Yan confirmed with a nod. Feng Tiandu took a glance up at the sky, then turned his gaze to the white stone wall within the valley, and he discovered that the scenery engraved upon it seemed to have sprung to life, with the rivers flowing and the birds taking flight. At the same time, the white light barrier around it began to become denser again. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out in the sky above the valley. "You sure got here nice and early, fellow Taoist Feng." A blue water lotus flower then slowly descended out of the sky, and it vanished into thin air as soon as it landed on the ground. Two figures were revealed, and they were none other than Luo Qinghai and his young disciple, Nan Kameng. As for the other vast flow palace cultivators, they weren't present for some reason. After landing on the ground, Luo Qinghai took a casual glance at everyone in the valley, and his gaze lingered on Han Li for an extra second. I may have come early, but you came at just the right time, fellow Taoist Luo. You've arrived right as the pill tribulation emerged, Feng Tiandu replied with a fake smile. Luo Qinghai paid no heed to Feng Tiandu's cold demeanor as he said, "It looks like this must be the true location of the High Zenith Palace. Earlier, I discovered an underwater palace that was filled with traps, and we went a great lengths to traverse through the palace, only to find that it wasn't even the right place. By the way, where's fellow Taoist Zio? He doesn't seem to be around." Internally, Feng Tiandu was cursing Luo Qinghai for his shamelessness. He had to have already arrived well in advance and observed the entire battle that was waged against Zio Jinhin, only to show himself now in order to reap the spoils. If it weren't for the sudden emergence of the pill tribulation, he most likely wouldn't even have shown himself now, and would have only come out of hiding after the Dawn Fall sect cultivators had battled everyone else in the valley. Palace Master Zio is a busy and blessed man. Perhaps he's already stumbled upon a more significant treasure and is no longer interested in this place, Feng Tiandu replied in a cold voice. Among all of the powers in the northern glacial Immortal region, the only one that he had regarded as a threat was the Blaze Dragon Dao, and among all of the Immortal region's cultivators, Zio Jinhin was certainly a fierce rival of his. But in his heart, Zio Jinhin was inferior to Bailey Yan. As for Luo Qinghai, Feng Tiandu had always looked down on him. I suppose we can only wish him the best of luck then. Speaking of Palace Master Zio, I ran into him a short while ago, Luo Qinghai said with a smile. Now that you're here, why don't you take a look and see if you can break the restriction in this valley, fellow Taoist Luo? You're a master of formation, so I'm sure you'll have a way, Feng Tiandu proposed. I'll spare myself the trouble. There's no way that the restriction guarding the High Zenith Palace is something that I can break on my own. Instead, I'll be requiring everyone's help, Luo Qinghai said with a smile. As soon as his voice trailed off, the golden cloud in the sky suddenly began to shrink, forming a giant vortex directly above the valley, and there were dull, rumbling thunderclaps ringing out within it. Luo Qinghai's smile instantly faded upon seeing this, and a serious look appeared on his face as he said, "The pill tribulation is about to descend, so the pills must be about to take shape. We can't waste any more time here." Feng Tiandu also nodded in response with a serious expression. Luo Qinghai turned to everyone else and declared, "Fellow Taoists, all of your efforts will be required in order to break this restriction. Otherwise, none of us will be able to enter the High Zenith Palace, and this massive opportunity will go to waste." "We're willing to help," Taoist Huyan answered. The elderly woman from the Southern Dawn race said in an unhurried manner, "I also have no objections to joining forces, but there are only 2 of us and so many of you. Once we enter the palace, we'll most likely be struck down on the spot. We're all here to secure treasures and opportunities, and risk and reward inevitably come hand in hand. If you wish to reap benefits without taking any risks, then I suggest you stay at home and wait for treasures to fall into your lap," Qi Tianxiao scoffed. "I think her concerns are actually quite valid, Sect Master Qi. Your Dawn Fall sect has the most people out of all of us, so how can we not be wary of you? If you want everyone to work together with you, then I'm afraid you might have to make some concessions," Luo Qinghai said with a smile. Qi Tianxiao was just about to respond when Feng Tiandu raised a hand to stop him, then said, "That's fine. There are only 2 Southern Dawn beings present and also only 2 cultivators from your vast flow palace. So how about we set a limit of 2 people per side to enter the High Zenith Palace?" Everyone was rather surprised to hear this proposal from Feng Tiandu, and Luo Qinghai was no exception. Judging from his expression, it was clear that he wasn't expecting Feng Tiandu to be so cooperative. I understand what all of you are concerned about, but your concerns are completely unnecessary. Time is of the essence right now, so we must work together. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind engaging all of you in battle in this valley. Then turn to breaking this restriction once that battle is decided, Feng Tiandu said with a faint smile. This is a very good proposal from Elder Feng. Our vast flow palace has no objections, Luo Qinghai said with a nod. The Southern Dawn race agrees to this proposal as well, the elderly woman said in an expressionless manner. Ouyang Qiushan was silent for a moment, then declared, Our Blaze Dragon Dao also has no objections. With that, the only side that was yet to make a declaration was Taoist Hu Yan's trio. Han Li took a glance at Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai, and he could only heave an internal sigh. He also wanted to enter the High Zenith Palace, but he didn't want to force Taoist Hu Yan to choose him, so he was already beginning to ponder ways to sneak into the palace once everyone else had gone in. However, to his surprise, Taoist Hu Yan suddenly declared to both him and Yun Nai through voice transmission, I'll bring fellow Taoist Li with me into the High Zenith Palace. Yun Nai merely nodded silently in response to this decision, while Han Li turned to Taoist Hu Yan as he raised an eyebrow in befuddlement. I've never been able to get a good handle on you, but there's one thing that I'm confident of, and that's that you're definitely not a treacherous person, so I have no qualms about bringing you with me. Most importantly, I have faith in your powers, Taoist Hu Yan explained. I think you're not mentioning something. The main reason you're taking me with you is because you don't want fellow Taoist Yun Nai to have to face the perils of the High Zenith Palace, right? Han Li jibed. You didn't have to expose me, fellow Taoist Li. Taoist Hu Yan chuckled as he discreetly handed Han Li something. Once we're done here, I'll follow through on my promise and give you the final 2 levels of the mantra axis scripture. You have my thanks, Han Li replied with a smile as he stowed the item away in a covert fashion. Meanwhile, Yun Nai was watching Taoist Hu Yan with a faint smile on her face, but a hint of concern in her eyes. Finally, Taoist Hu Yan turned to everyone else as he declared, Our true flame sect has no objections either. All right, in that case, let's begin right away, shall we? Luo Qinghai proposed. Everyone immediately gathered around and began making their way toward the stone wall upon hearing this. It appears to me that the scenic artwork engraved onto this stone wall is very similar to that of the Infernal Frost scenic painting, but at the same time, it's not completely identical. There are 13 of us present, and if all of us use the 9 palaces formation shattering formation while unleashing the 9 true spirits technique at once, then we should be able to break this restriction, Luo Qinghai declared. Everyone present fell into a contemplative silence upon hearing this, while Han Li turned to Taoist Hu Yan as he raised an eyebrow. The 9 palaces formation shattering formation was quite a prevalently used formation in the immortal realm, and as the name suggested, its purpose was to break restrictions. As for the 9 true spirits technique, this was a technique that was slightly inferior to the Great 5-Elemental True Light, but perhaps it could be more potent than the Great 5-Elemental True Light when used in conjunction with the 9 palaces formation shattering formation. In that case, please oversee the proceedings and we'll begin right away, Feng Tiandu said. Luo Qinghai nodded in response, then began instructing all of the golden immortals present to get into the correct formation, following which he gave everyone a detailed explanation of how to use the 9 true spirits technique. After that, he declared, let's begin. In total, there were 13 golden immortals present, 1 from the vast flow palace, 2 from the Southern Dawn race, 3 from the Blaze Dragon Dao, and 3 in Han Li's camp, and all of them began unleashing the 9 true spirits technique at once. As everyone began to chant a collective incantation, their robes began to billow and sway as gusts of wind swept through the area, and the immortal spiritual power fluctuations emanating from their bodies were becoming more and more pronounced. Han Li was standing on a point in the formation, and a peculiar feeling welled up in his heart. This was a formation of individuals using the 9 true spirits technique at the same time, yet due to the fact that they were arranged in the 9 palaces formation-shattering formation, some type of strange connection had formed between all of them. Their immortal spiritual power was like 13 streams that were drawn in by some type of force to converge into a single lake. Luo Qinghai was situated at the forefront of the formation, and he was the only outlet for this lake. Bright blue light was rippling around him as he made a peculiar hand seal before thrusting it forward, and all of the people in the formation instantly began to glow radiantly, while the immortal spiritual power in their bodies surged toward Luo Qinghai. A vast volume of immortal spiritual power converged to form a lotus flower projection beneath Luo Qinghai, and it rose up like a lotus flower platform to elevate him in the sky. Blue light emerged within his eyes as well, and strands of azure light also appeared over his robes, roaming around as if they were living creatures. He joined his palms together before pointing a finger at the white stone wall, and a pillar of blue light instantly shot out of his fingertip to strike the stone wall. The white light barrier on the surface of the stone wall immediately began to churn like boiling water, and a series of transparent ripples surged over its surface in all directions. Meanwhile, in the sky above a misty green lake, a loud commotion was ringing out, and massive waves that were in excess of 1,000 feet tall were constantly erupting out of the lake, while streaks of light of all types of different colors were flashing through the air. There were a series of strange vortexes on the surface of the lake that stretched all the way down to the lakebed, and several figures were traversing over the water above the vortexes with great difficulty, clashing against the blue figures that were constantly springing out of the vortexes. It was unclear what these blue figures were. They appeared to be puppets, but their bodies were formed by water and would be scattered upon being struck by powerful attacks, only to quickly reform to enter the battle once more. The ones that these blue figures were attacking were none other than Zhu Weiying and the other northern glacial immortal palace cultivators, who had been recruited by Luo Qinghai to assist him. Back when the vast flow palace cultivators first arrived here, this place had still been a vast yellow desert. They had already set up the formation that was required to shatter the ovular yellow light barrier here, and all they were missing was the power of an additional golden immortal. As the deputy palace master of the northern glacial immortal palace, Zhu Weiying was certainly no slouch, and she had made sure to examine the formation carefully. On top of that, she had also questioned Luo Qinghai extensively about the formation and the surrounding environment, and only after she was absolutely certain that nothing was amiss did she agree to lend him her assistance. However, right as the restriction guarding the ancient tomb was about to be broken, all of the sand in the vast desert suddenly began to churn violently. Undulating ripples surged through the desert like waves in the sea, and the giant ancient tomb suddenly sank down into the ground, while the entire surrounding area in a radius of several kilometers instantly transformed into a blue lake. At the same time, a vast golden formation suddenly lit up from the ancient tomb that had sunk into the lake, creating all of these vortexes which had released immense suction force to trap her and prevent her from getting away. After that came these strange blue figures, of which there seemed to be no end. By the time she finally managed to regain her bearings, she discovered that all of the vast flow palace cultivators had already slipped away amid the chaos, while all of the immortal palace true immortals that she had brought with her were also trapped above the lake in their attempt to save her. Zhu Wang knew that she had fallen into a trap set by the vast flow palace cultivators, and she was furious, but she was unable to free herself. Right at this moment, a green jade flying carriage suddenly appeared from afar, then drew to a halt above the lake. A graceful middle-aged man was standing at the front of the flying carriage, and he looked down at the lake with slightly furrowed brows before making a casual tossing motion. The white jade pixie in his hand flew through the air in an arc, then fell into the lake with a small splash. Moments later, a series of enormous waves suddenly swept over the surface of the lake, and a pillar of dazzling white light erupted out of the lakebed to destroy all of the vortexes in the water. A puppet in the form of a giant white pixie that was thousands of feet in size then emerged from the water with a black millstone clasped in its mouth, and it sprang up into the sky, then crunched down onto the black millstone with its teeth until it was broken into pieces. At the same time, the surface of the lake gradually began to return to its former peaceful state, and only then were Zhu Wang and the others freed. After taking a moment to compose herself, Zhu Wang cast her gaze toward the flying carriage, then began to approach it before stopping around 10 feet away, where she extended a respectful curtsy toward the middle-aged man on the flying carriage. Junior Zhu Wang pays her respects to Immortal Envoy Gongshu. The middle-aged was none other than Gongshu Jiu, the Immortal Envoy sent by the Heavenly Court. Why are you being so formal and distant? Our clans are on very good terms with one another, and I'm also close friends with your father, so there's no need for you to be so uptight around me, Gongshu Jiu said with a warm smile. My apologies, Uncle Gongshu, Zhu Wang replied as a smile appeared on her face. I received your message telling me to pay the northern glacial immortal region quite some time ago, but I was busy with some other matters, so I wasn't able to get here earlier. I didn't think that things would already be this chaotic, Gongshu Jiu sighed. Palace Master Zio. Zhu Wang was just about to say something, but she suddenly stopped, then took a glance at the other immortal palace cultivators nearby. Go ahead, they won't be able to hear you, Gongshu Jiu said with a smile as he casually swept a sleeve through the air. Zhu Wang's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this, and she could sense that an invisible light barrier had appeared around herself and Gongshu Jiu. Over these past years, Palace Master Zio's cultivation base has progressed quite significantly, and he was determined to unite the entire northern glacial immortal region. For this purpose, he's been making many moves, and as a result, the entire immortal region has been stirred up into a state of unrest. After what happened to Bailey Yan, it appeared on the surface that the Dawn Fall sect and the vast Flow Palace became much more subdued, but the reality is that they were merely accumulating power. If Palace Master Zio continues down this reckless path, I fear that an all-out war will eventually be triggered in the northern glacial immortal region, so I had no choice but to supersede his authority and contact you directly, Zhu Wang explained with a solemn expression. You did the right thing. The Heavenly Court has already noticed the unrest that's brewing in this immortal region. The Reincarnation Palace has become more and more active of late, so this isn't the only immortal region that could be under threat. I was late to get here precisely because I was taking care of some matters in another immortal region, and I came here directly after learning about the emergence of the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor, Gongshu Jiu said. It's very fortunate that you just so happen to be passing through, Uncle Gongshu. Otherwise, I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't know how I would have gotten out of that trap, Zhu Wang said as she cupped her fist in a grateful salute. This is a very intricate and powerful formation that can only be broken by entering the water and destroying the mechanisms inside. The longer you're trapped in the formation, the more firmly entrenched in it you'll become. So even if you possessed late golden immortal stage powers, it would have been very difficult for you to save yourself, Gongshu Jiu said with a smile. We all fell for Luo Qinghai's trap, Zhu Wang sighed as a hint of dejection flashed through her eyes. "Where is Xiao Jinhan right now?" Gong Shujiu suddenly asked. "I parted ways with him right before coming here. I'll take you to him right away," Zhu Wang hurriedly replied. "Let's go," Gong Shujiu replied with a nod, then swept a sleeve through the air. At this point, the giant white Pixiu had already devoured the black millstone, and it suddenly shrank back down into that jade trinket from before, then flew back into Gong Shujiu's grasp. The only thing that was different about it was that a small black spot had appeared within its belly. After that, Gong Shujiu and the Immortal Palace cultivators flew away into the distance. Unbeknownst to them, there was a black stone passageway that led downward under the ancient tomb at the bottom of the lake, and the walls of the passageway were riddled with irregularly shaped luminescent white rocks as a light source. At this moment, there was a figure slowly making their way deeper into the passageway. Basking in the glow of the luminescent rocks, her skin was as fair as snow, and it was none other than Lu Yuking. At this moment, her eyes were as bright as stars, but she was trudging along in a completely expressionless manner. Inside the valley, all of the mountains and rivers engraved onto the white stone wall were radiating dazzling golden light, and a series of golden runes were flying out of them before surging into the white light barrier. With the injection of these golden runes, the white light barrier was significantly stabilized, and it had also taken on an extremely viscous quality. Luo Qinghai's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he switched to a different hand seal as he let loose a low roar. The lotus platform projection beneath him immediately began to glow brightly while taking on a more substantial form, and at the same time, the sound of a light breeze rang out around the platform as a blue vortex emerged, releasing tremendous suction force. Han Li's expression instantly changed slightly upon seeing this, and he could feel his own immortal spiritual power surging rapidly into the vortex like floodwaters through a broken dam. He took a quick glance at everyone else in the formation to find that all of them also wore peculiar expressions, indicating that a large amount of their immortal spiritual power had just been taken as well. Don't be alarmed, fellow Taoists. This restriction is even more formidable than I anticipated, so I'll need all of you to lend me more of your power, Luo Qinghai reassured. There's no need to explain anything to us, fellow Taoist Luo. If you're trying to chip away at our immortal spiritual power, then this is far too crude a method, and I'm sure you wouldn't stoop to something like this, Feng Tiandu said. I'm glad I have your trust, fellow Taoist Feng, Luo Qinghai replied with a smile. As he was speaking, the lotus platform beneath him had already taken on a completely substantial form, and it looked as if it had been carved out of a piece of blue crystal. All of a sudden, Luo Qinghai let loose a thunderous roar, and the lotus platform, which had harnessed a vast amount of immortal spiritual power from everyone, shot forth through the air. Immediately thereafter, all of its petals drifted down from above, spiraling through the air as they passed through the golden light barrier to land upon the white stone wall. Bursts of blue light appeared over the stone wall on the spots where the petals had descended, and a series of lotus flowers instantly bloomed to cover the entire stone wall. Han Li was amazed to see this, but also a little apprehensive. It had become apparent that Luo Qinghai had only asked them to adopt the 9 palaces formation shattering formation and use the 9 true spirits technique so that he could draw upon their immortal spiritual power, while what he was actually using to break this restriction was the blue lotus flower. Before he had a chance to think about anything, Luo Qinghai thrust both palms forward in a slow and casual motion, looking as if he were pushing open the door of his own home. As he thrust his palms forward, then parted them down the sides, the golden light barrier over the white stone wall instantly shattered, and a golden line also appeared directly down the center of the stone wall before parting like doors. The stone wall slowly opened inward without making a sound, and everyone in the valley was also completely silent as they stared at the radiant white light beyond the stone wall with tense and nervous expressions. After the stone wall completely parted, all everyone could see was a vast expanse of blinding white light. No objects flew out from within, nor were there any formidable energy fluctuations. Hanley flipped a hand over to produce a regenerative pill, which he promptly devoured, and he was also holding a pair of immortal origin stones to replenish his immortal spiritual power reserves. At the same time, he peered into the white light with his bright-sight spirit eyes. However, even with his spirit eye ability activated, all he could was still just a vast expanse of white light, and his spiritual sense wasn't able to enter the white light at all. The restriction has already been opened. Please abide by our agreement and only send in 2 people per side. Otherwise, I'll be forced to close the restriction again, and only the heavens know what'll happen after that, Luo Qinghai said in a warm but implacable voice. Feng Tiandu turned to Qi Tianxia with a nod upon hearing this, and the 2 of them flew into the white light before vanishing on the spot, while all of the other Dawn Fall sect cultivators remained outside. Immediately thereafter, the 2 Southern Dawn race cultivators flew into the white light, and Taoist Hu Yen spoke briefly to Yun Nai through voice transmission, before also entering the white light with Han Li. In the instant that he flew into the white light, Han Li felt a burst of sharp pain in his eyes, and he reflexively closed them. In the next instant, as he reopened his eyes, he discovered that he was already situated in another strange world. The entire surrounding area was filled with white mist that wasn't very dense, and he was able to discern between mist and space in the nearby vicinity, but the 2 had completely fused into one further away. After conducting a brief inspection, Han Li discovered that not only was his visibility obstructed here, he wasn't able to release his spiritual sense very far either. The other people who had entered this space ahead of him were also hovering within the white mist, and they had all distanced themselves from one another as they inspected their surroundings with cautious expressions. Having just entered this place, everyone was feeling quite tense, and no one dared to charge recklessly into the mist. Shortly thereafter, Aoyang Qiushan and another golden immortal from the Blaze Dragon Dao appeared in the mist, and they took a glance at Taoist Hu Yan, but only drew a little closer instead of flying directly to Taoist Hu Yan's side. Before long, Luo Qinghai and his disciple, Nan Keming, had also entered this place. "Why are you all still here, fellow Taoists? Could it be that you were all waiting for me? I am truly honored," he said with a warm smile as he also began inspecting his surroundings. No one offered a response, and everyone was still trying to find the best way forward. Looking at the surrounding mist, a hesitant look appeared on Han Li's face. His bright-sight spirit eyes were completely useless here, but perhaps he would be able to see something with his eye of truth. However, this was still far too early to be exposing the fact that he was using a time attribute cultivation art, and showing his hand too early was definitely not a good idea. Right as he was hesitating about how to proceed, he suddenly noticed out of the corner of his eye that a cloud of white mist seemed to have risen up in the eyes of Nan Keming, and he was staring into the distance in a certain direction with a dazed look on his face. Meanwhile, Luo Qinghai was pretending to search the place in an aimless fashion, but in reality, his attention had been focused on this disciple of his the entire time. Han Li also cast his gaze in that direction in a subtle fashion, but he wasn't able to see anything there aside from white mist, and he couldn't help but wonder if Nan Keming possessed some type of special spirit eye ability. With that in mind, Han Li decided to keep some tabs on him. Moments later, Luo Qinghai suddenly said, "We can't just stand around here forever. How about we each choose a direction and do some exploring? This white mist is able to keep out spiritual sense. Who knows what could be lurking inside? What if we fly in straight to our deaths? The elderly woman from the Southern Dawn race harumphed coldly. If none of you are willing to take a risk, then I'll be going on ahead, Luo Qinghai said with a smile, then latched onto the arm of his disciple before flying away. Let's follow them, fellow Taoist Hu Yan, Han Li immediately said to Taoist Hu Yan through voice transmission. Have you noticed something? Taoist Hu Yan asked in a hesitant voice. Under these circumstances, actively following someone could easily be seen as a gesture of provocation, and he didn't want to oppose Luo Qinghai for now. Many years ago, Bailey Yan had told him that on the surface, Luo Qinghai appeared to be a very kind and easygoing person, but in reality, he was most prone to holding grudges, and making an enemy out of even someone like Qi Tianxiao was a better alternative to getting on Luo Qinghai's bad side. I suspect that Luo Qinghai's disciple has some type of special ocular ability that can allow him to ascertain the location of the High Zenith Palace, but I can't be sure. However, what I can say for sure is that there's definitely something strange about them, Han Li explained. Given Luo Qinghai's personality, it would be much more characteristic of him to let others venture into the mist first, so it's indeed rather suspicious that he's going in first himself. All right, let's do as you say then, Taoist Hu Yan decided after some contemplation. With that, the two of them immediately flew into the mist, following Luo Qinghai's duo from afar. Ouyang Qiushan took a glance at the other Tao Lord, and the two of them set off in another direction slightly to the left of where Taoist Hu Yan and Han Li had gone. The pair of Southern Dawn beings also flew away in another direction, and thus, Feng Tiandu and Qi Tianxiao were the only ones left. Moments later, Feng Tiandu suddenly said, "They should be sufficiently far away by now. Let's go after them." After that, he swept a hand through the air to conjure up a black light barrier that encompassed both himself and Qi Tianxiao, then set off in the same direction as Han Li. Deep within the mist, Luo Qinghai and Nan Kemeng were flying onward at an even pace. All of a sudden, Nan Kemeng stopped in his tracks, then took a glance at the mist behind him as he said, "Palace Master, there are people following us." "That's only to be expected. Who are the ones following us?" Luo Qinghai asked with a smile. "Everyone," Nan Kemeng replied with slightly furrowed brows. Luo Qinghai was rather taken aback by this answer, and a mocking sneer appeared on his face. "The ones closest to us are the two cultivators from the True Flame sect. The Blaze Dragon Tao and the Southern Dawn race have both chosen more roundabout routes, but they're all following us as well. As for the Dawn Fall sect cultivators, they're a bit further away, but it seems like they're following the True Flame sect cultivators," Nan Kemeng elaborated. "True Flame sect my arse. One of them is none other than Taoist Hu Yan of the Blaze Dragon Tao. As for that so-called nephew of his, I have no idea who that is. There's no one that fits his description in our northern glacial Immortal region, and it's like he popped up out of nowhere," Luo Qinghai mused with tightly furrowed brows. "What should we do then?" Nan Kemeng asked. "The High Zenith pills are about to be ready, so we have no time to waste here. Let's go," Luo Qinghai replied. He then made a hand seal to conjure up a blue light barrier, which encompassed both himself and Nan Kemeng. Immediately thereafter, the two of them vanished into thin air amid a flurry of rainbow bubbles. A short while later, Han Li and Taoist Hu Yan sped onto the scene, and the latter asked, "What happened?" "No wonder they weren't worried about us following them. They've already prepared measures to shake us off their trail," Han Li said. "I should have known," Taoist Hu Yan sighed. "What do we do now?" "There's something I can try, but I need you to release your spirit domain to conceal me for a short while," Han Li replied after a brief hesitation. "All right, go ahead," Taoist Hu Yan hurriedly said, then immediately released his fiery spirit domain to encompass the entire surrounding area in a radius of several thousand feet. I can't expand the spirit domain any more beyond this point. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that I'll be able to conceal your energy fluctuations, Taoist Huyan explained. This is fine. If you make it any bigger, it'll attract attention from the others, Han Li replied with a nod, then summoned his mantra-treasured axis amid a flash of golden light. The radiant golden axis was riddled with time Dao runes, and despite Taoist Huyan's vast wealth of experience, even he couldn't help but be astonished by the formidable time law power fluctuations emanating from the axis. His mouth sprang open in shock, and he was completely rooted to the spot. Han Li paid no heed to Taoist Huyan's reaction, as he focused on scouring the surrounding area with his eye of truth. And it didn't take long before he spotted a burst of lingering spatial fluctuations to his right. "I've found them," Han Li declared as he withdrew his hand seal, and the mantra-treasured axis instantly vanished back into his body. Taoist Huyan was still reeling a little as he praised. "I knew you were cultivating the mantra axis scripture, but I didn't think you had already reached such an extraordinary level of mastery over the laws of time. I encountered some strokes of fortune in the past that accelerated my mastery over this cultivation art," Han Li explained in an ambiguous manner. "Be honest with me. Have you been concealing your true cultivation base this entire time, or have you also been cultivating the laws of reincarnation in secret? Otherwise, I can't think of any other way that you could have reached the middle golden immortal stage in such a short time," Taoist Huyan said with tightly furrowed brows. Han Li heaved a resigned sigh upon hearing this. "I was telling you the truth earlier. Not long ago, I stumbled into a strange secret area and cultivated for tens of thousands of years in there to reach the mid-golden immortal stage. However, when I came out, I discovered that the flow of time in there was completely different from that of the outside world, and not even a moment had passed by outside the secret area." Taoist Huyan was stunned into silence upon hearing this, then forced a smile onto his own face as he sighed. "Just how lucky of a little rascal are you?" Han Li rolled his eyes in response, and he didn't bother to explain anything. In his own eyes, he was far from fortunate. Whenever he encountered a stroke of fortune, it would always be preceded by extremely perilous situations that could have easily had him killed. All of a sudden, Taoist Huyan reached out toward Han Li, then spread his hand open to reveal a pair of white jade slips with golden patterns etched upon them. Han Li raised an eyebrow as he asked, "What's this, fellow Taoist Huyan?" "These are the 5th and 6th levels of the mantra axis scripture, and I'm giving them to you now because I have something to ask of you," Taoist Huyan replied with a solemn expression. "Tell me what you want me to do first," Han Li said as his brows furrowed slightly. "Once we enter the High Zenith Palace, I want you to help me secure a High Zenith pill. Just one will do," Taoist Huyan explained. "I will do my best to assist you as long as it doesn't place me in any excessive danger," Han Li replied. "I knew you would say that," Taoist Huyan chuckled. "Fine, you can have these jade slips." Han Li accepted the pair of jade slips from Taoist Huyan, then briefly examined them before stowing them away into his storage bracelet. "Why didn't you wait until we left the Immortal Manor before you gave these to me? I would have still agreed to help you nonetheless," Han Li asked. "Would you believe me if I told you that I want to suck up to you because you're the most prodigious cultivator I've ever seen?" Taoist Huyan asked. "I believe you," Han Li replied with a serious expression. "Well, you're certainly not shy," Taoist Huyan chuckled with an amused expression. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as well as he flew away toward the right, followed closely by Taoist Huyan. All of a sudden, Han Li vanished into thin air, much to Taoist Huyan's alarm, and he hurriedly accelerated forward, upon which he also vanished into the white mist in the blink of an eye. Immediately thereafter, he and Han Li appeared in another independent space, one after the other. Hovering in midair several thousand feet below the two of them was a small landmass that was several hundred kilometers in size, and it was riddled with all types of intricate pavilions and buildings, as well as lush greenery. Several rivers were flowing through the area like a series of jade belts, and they spilled down over the edge of the landmass to form numerous waterfalls that were exceptionally beautiful to behold. On a spacious plot of land on the edge of the landmass was a lush spirit beast pen that was split up into hundreds of small areas, and there were hundreds of species of different spirit beasts being kept inside. Directly across from the spirit beast pen was a vast spirit medicine garden with all types of spirit medicines growing inside, and their medicinal auras were so potent that they were rising up into the sky like wisps of smoke. Taoist Huyan pointed some tall, fiery red horses and green jade-like lions in the pen as he exclaimed, "Those are blusher horses and azure bamboo lions. They went extinct in the northern glacial Immortal region tens of thousands of years ago. That spirit medicine garden must have many high-grade immortal plants that are hundreds of thousands of years old growing in there. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so much purple smoke rising up from it," Han Li also remarked. There were also many black-robed servants littered throughout the spirit beast pen and the spirit medicine garden. Some of them were working in the fields while holding different types of tools. Some were feeding the spirit beasts, some were watering the garden, some were grooming the beasts, and some were picking plants, fruits, and leaves from the garden. All of them had their own duties, and they were carrying out those duties in an orderly fashion. In between those two areas was a white stone mountain path that also had some black-robed servants on it, and they were responsible for carrying the spirit beast materials and spirit medicinal ingredients gathered by the other servants to the top of the mountain. After some observation, Han Li raised an eyebrow as he remarked, "These servants all seem to be puppets." "That's right, they are indeed all puppets," Taoist Huyan confirmed with a nod after some close scrutiny. As the two of them were speaking, golden light began to converge up above, and a dense golden cloud emerged. The pill tribulation that had already appeared quite some time ago in the outside world had only just begun to make an appearance in this secret area. Han Li tracked down the exact central point of the golden cloud, then cast his gaze downward to find that there was a resplendent golden palace with a round dome perched atop the tallest point on the mountain summit. There were two figures on the plaza outside the golden palace, and bright blue light was radiating from their bodies as they cast strings of incantation seals at the gates of the palace. "Looks like Luo Qinghai is already working on breaking the restriction. We should go as well," Han Li said. "Fine by me," Taoist Huyan replied. As soon as his voice trailed off, a patch of space over 1,000 feet away began to warp slightly, following which Feng Tiandu and Qi Tianxiao appeared. Feng Tiandu took a quick glance at Han Li, then immediately turned his attention to the golden palace in the distance as he flew directly toward the plaza with Qi Tianxiao by his side. How did they find this place? Could it be that someone among them also possesses void spirit eyes? Luo Qinghai mused with a perplexed expression at the sight of the approaching Feng Tiandu and Qi Tianxiao. "What do we do, Palace Master? The restriction is about to be broken soon," Nan Kemeng asked. "So be it, let's focus on getting into the palace first," Luo Qinghai replied as he thrust his palms forcefully against the palace gates. A blue leaf that was riddled with silver patterns shot out of the palm of his leading hand, before pressing itself against the palace gates. The palace gates instantly began to glow with radiant blue light, and the leaf melted away before vanishing into the gates, leaving only the silver patterns intertwining with one another to form a series of complex runes that spread over the gates. All of the silver runes quickly turned into cracks, and before long, the golden gates were shattered amid a crisp crack. Right as Luo Qinghai and Nan Keming were about to rush into the palace, Feng Tiandu's voice rang out from behind them. All of us work together to break the restriction and get to this point. Surely, you don't intend to reap all the benefits for yourself and leave nothing for everyone else. Of course not, fellow Taoist Feng. I just so happened to get here first, and time is of the essence, so I thought I'd open the palace gates to make things more convenient for everyone, Luo Qinghai replied with a smile. Right at this moment, Han Li and Taoist Hu Yan also descended in front of the Golden Palace. Luo Qinghai and Feng Tiandu both took a glance at Han Li's duo in unison, and a smile appeared on the former's face, while the latter remained completely expressionless. Before anyone had a chance to say anything, 4 more streaks of light flashed into the secret area one after another. And the 2 Southern Dawn race Golden Immortals and Aoyan Qiushan's duo also arrived before descending in front of the Golden Palace as well. Upon landing on the ground, the elderly woman of the Southern Dawn race immediately gave a cold harumph to express her displeasure, while Aoyan Qiushan gave Taoist Hu Yan a subtle nod. They had only been able to enter this place as Taoist Hu Yan had informed them of the location of the entrance through a secret technique. With that, everyone was once again reunited. Right at this moment, the golden cloud in the sky above began to churn violently, and in the span of just a few seconds, it encompassed the entire heavens, basking everyone in dazzling golden radiance. Tremendous energy fluctuations were surging out of the golden cloud, striking even all of the golden immortals present with a sense of foreboding. It was as if the golden cloud had already completely fused as one with the sky, and there was an extremely heavy atmosphere hanging in the air, as if the entire sky were about to come crashing down. Immediately thereafter, bursts of rumbling began to ring out incessantly from within the cloud, and an enormous golden vortex emerged, revolving rapidly on the spot. A burst of dazzling silver light began to slowly take shape at the center of the vortex, and it resembled a giant silver water droplet with arcs of lightning constantly flashing over its surface. With the formation of this silver water droplet, a burst of terrifying spiritual power fluctuations descended from above, encompassing the entirety of the Golden Palace. Han Li swept his gaze over the Golden Palace to find that countless runes had been engraved onto its pillars, doors, and window frames. And at this moment, all of these runes were glowing as radiantly as stars in the night sky. The ground inside the palace was also etched with rings of circular patterns that resembled circles of guards defending the giant jade-like pill cauldron at the center of the palace. The cauldron stood at over 7 feet tall, and it had 3 feet and a pair of handles, as was the case with most standard pill refinement cauldrons. It looked as if the cauldron were forged from jade, but that wasn't actually the case. There were scorching flames surging within the cauldron, but no heat could be felt outside of it, and that was a clear testament to its insulative properties. On top of that, there were 9 coiled dragons engraved around the cauldron amid the masses of spirit patterns, and these dragons were extremely lifelike. All of them had their mouths opened upward, aimed at a statue of a 3-legged golden crow on top of the cauldron's lid. Han Li focused his gaze on the golden crow statue with his bright-sight spirit eyes, and he noticed that there were wisps of white light flowing the cauldron from its 3 legs, which were connected to the cauldron's lid. All of a sudden, the golden vortex up above brightened significantly, and the massive silver water droplet fell out of the sky before crashing into the top of the Golden Palace's roof. A vast expanse of blinding silver light instantly erupted forth, and arcs of silver lightning exploded in all directions, inundating the entire Golden Palace amid a deafening boom. Everyone's expressions changed drastically upon seeing this as they darted back in retreat, while the golden palace abruptly sank downward, as if a mountain had crashed down onto it, crushing it into the ground. However, immediately thereafter, all of the runes on the surface of the entire palace lit up, and a vast wave of golden light swept forth to intertwine with the vast expanse of silver lightening up above. The entire golden palace resembled a radiant golden sun, and at the same time, golden light spread from the center of its roof along its rafters to alleviate the tremendous force that was crashing down upon it. Even so, a pillar of silver light was still able to pierce straight through the center of the roof to strike the pill refinement cauldron, and a dull thump rang out as all of the runes engraved onto the ground inside the palace lit up in rapid succession. Immediately thereafter, layers of golden light barriers rose up from the ground, collecting the wisps of golden light and funneling them into the pill cauldron. Radiant golden light emerged within the eyes of the 9 dragons engraved onto the cauldron, while pillars of white light shot out of their mouths, converging from all directions to clash against the pillar of silver light. Meanwhile, Han Li was observing all of this from outside the palace with an awestruck expression. It was extremely impressive that the Infernal Frost Immortal Lord had managed to construct this high zenith palace and have the entire thing run by puppets. Not only were these puppets capable of collecting ingredients on their own, they were even able to refine what was clearly a Tao pill. What was most incredible of all was that this golden palace was capable of opposing pill tribulations, and that was unfathomable to Han Li. Could it be that the old Taoist priest really was an unmatched genius, as he proclaimed? Upon emerging from that secret area, Han Li had completely sealed the soul fragment that belonged to the self-proclaimed Infernal Frost Immortal Lord into the soul-nurturing burner, so that it was completely cut off from the outside world. Right now, he was contemplating undoing the restriction so that he could communicate with the soul fragment. All of a sudden, Taoist Hu Yan's voice rang out to snap him out of his train of thought. The pill tribulation is about to come to an end. Prepare yourself. Sure enough, the silver lightning that was raging over the ceiling of the palace had gradually begun to subside, and faint plumes of smoke were rising up from the golden palace, while a scorched scent was wafting through the air. However, the entire palace was glowing even more radiantly than prior to the pill tribulation. "Let's go," someone called out, and everyone immediately flew into the palace at once. At this point, the pillar of silver light inside the palace had already faded, but the golden light barriers were still standing, protecting the pill cauldron from all directions. Han Li swept his gaze across the interior of the palace to find that there was a series of gray stone statues situated on either of the palace, and all of them were wielding different weapons. They were standing completely still on the spot, but there were spiritual power fluctuations emanating from their bodies, and they were clearly all puppets. Behind the pill cauldron was a platform that was raised about 3 feet above the ground, upon which was a large golden chair with dragons and phoenixes engraved upon it, giving it a very grandiose appearance. Seated atop the chair was a middle-aged man, wearing a dark green Taoist robe. His hands were resting on the armrests of the chair, and his eyes were closed. He had one leg crossed over the other while leaning against the back of the chair, giving him a rather lackadaisical appearance that was somewhat of a mismatch with his handsome appearance. Everyone was greatly startled to see this, and they immediately prepared for battle, only to discover a moment that the middle-aged man seemed to be nothing more than a corpse that was completely devoid of vitality. However, that wasn't entirely accurate, as his chest was rising and falling slightly in a rhythmic fashion as if he were breathing, and it was as if he was a living corpse. Right at this moment, a small 5-colored cloud rose up from the top of the cauldron, and out of the dragons engraved onto the cauldron, the one that was facing the palace gates suddenly flashed momentarily with silver light, following which a longan-sized silver pill flew out of its mouth. With the emergence of the pill, an incredibly potent medicinal fragrance instantly permeated throughout the entire palace. Everyone immediately turned their attention to the pill, with fervent looks in their eyes. Hold on a second, everyone. Those golden rings form a protective formation for the cauldron, and if we charge in recklessly, the entire cauldron of pills could be destroyed, Luo Qinghai yelled. The pill has already taken shape. Who cares if the cauldron is destroyed? The elderly woman from the Southern Dawn race retorted as she prepared to step forward, but a blue light barrier abruptly rose up from the ground to block her path. Is it finally time to fight? I've been raring to go this entire time, the elderly man chuckled. Han Li and Taoist Hu Yan exchanged a glance, and they immediately channeled their immortal spiritual power as well. All of a sudden, a very tense atmosphere had descended upon the palace. Let's remain calm and civilized, everyone. I'm not intervening because I want to stop all of you from fighting over the pill. I simply don't want to see the other 8 high zenith pills destroyed just for this single one, Luo Qinghai hurriedly explained. Oh, are you saying that there are as many as 9 high zenith pills in that cauldron? Feng Tiandu asked as he raised an eyebrow. That's right. If I'm not mistaken, this pill refinement cauldron should be the 9 jewel-bearing dragon's cauldron, an incredible cauldron that always produced 9 pills per batch, 1 out of each dragon's mouth. However, the pills won't emerge all at once, so we should wait until all 9 are ready, Luo Qinghai explained. Now that you mention it, I also recall hearing about this cauldron. It's said that countless years ago, an almighty figure once gathered many precious natural treasures of the true immortal realm, as well as the souls of true spirits to refine a pill cauldron of incredible power, and it contains some type of law power that allow pill refinement ingredients to combine with one another in a more harmonious fashion. I certainly wasn't expecting to see it here, the elderly woman mused. Everyone's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, but a hint of greed had surfaced in their eyes as they turned their attention to the pill cauldron. That brings up another problem then. There are 10 of us here right now, yet only 9 high zenith pills, so how are we going to split them? Feng Tiandu mused with a contemplative expression. As soon as this point was raised, everyone immediately tensed up once again. That's not a problem. I already said that I've only entered the Infernal Frost Immortal Palace on this occasion to broaden my disciples' horizons, and that objective has already been achieved. In light of that, our vast flow palace will only claim 1 pill, so that evens things out perfectly, Luo Qinghai said with a smile. Everyone was very surprised and befuddled to hear this. Right at this moment, the golden light barriers around the pill cauldron suddenly faded, and a golden humanoid puppet suddenly stepped around from behind the pill cauldron, then reached out to grab the silver pill that had flown out of the dragon's mouth before turning back around and making its way the large golden chair. Everyone was rather perplexed to see this, but they still followed the golden puppet nonetheless. Right at this moment, a vast cloud of black mist suddenly emerged, then swept over everyone in a wave. It was as if everyone had suddenly been sucked into an extremely viscous swamp, and not only was their mobility significantly hampered, even their immortal spiritual power circulation had been slowed down significantly. The same applied to Han Li, but the time law powers in his body weren't affected at all. Bright azure light emerged over his body as he channeled his time law powers to force out the surrounding black mist, and as he turned to look behind himself, he discovered that the source of the viscous black mist was none other than Feng Tiandu. Plumes of black qi were surging out of his body, forming a black spirit domain that had trapped everyone inside. The black spirit domain was extremely dense, but it wasn't very large, only encompassing less than half of the palace, so it didn't trigger the golden formation around the pill cauldron. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing this. During that battle between Feng Tiandu and Zhao Jinhen outside the High Zenith Palace, the spirit domain that he had unleashed had been nowhere near as formidable as this one, so it was clear that he had intentionally concealed his true power. In a rare display of animosity, the amicable smile on Luo Qinghai's face faded as he yelled in a furious voice. "What is the meaning of this, Feng Tiandu? Do you intend to take all of the High Zenith stage for yourself?" Immediately thereafter, a vortex of radiant blue light emerged around him, and it revolved incessantly while expanding outward, forming a blue spirit domain in the blink of an eye. Countless turbulent wave projections were churning throughout the entire spirit domain, and while it was inferior to Feng Tiandu's black spirit domain, the gap wasn't all that significant. In the face of the crashing blue waves, the black spirit domain was scattered a little. At the same time, Taoist Hu Yan and the elderly woman from the Southern Dawn race also unleashed their fiery spirit domains, and the combined power of the three spirit domains was instantly able to ward off the majority of the black spirit domain's power. As a result, the pressure on the other golden immortal stages present was significantly alleviated, and they immediately summoned a series of immortal treasures to launch a barrage of attacks at Feng Tiandu. Han Li also summoned an azure bamboo cloudswarm sword, and it swelled drastically in size before hurtling toward Feng Tiandu alongside all of the other immortal treasures. Even though Han Li had refrained from unleashing the true power of his azure bamboo cloudswarm sword, it still wasn't inferior in the slightest compared with all of the other immortal treasures. A cold sneer appeared on Feng Tiandu's face as he swept a sleeve through the air, and 16 thick black chains shot out of his body. All of the chains were riddled with countless tiny translucent runes of different shapes and forms, and they were giving off extremely formidable law power fluctuations. Feng Tiandu had unleashed these chains in the past, but as was the case with his spirit domain, these chains were far more formidable than the ones that he had previously displayed. The 16 chains glowed with dazzling black light as they swept through the surrounding area, and a string of resounding booms rang out as all of the oncoming immortal treasures were swatted away by the chains. As soon as the 16 black chains appeared, the entire black spirit domain immediately began to ripple and flash erratically while rapidly becoming denser and more formidable. As a result, the three opposing spirit domains were quickly suppressed, and the restrictive power of the black spirit domain was significantly enhanced once again as it swept toward all of the surrounding golden immortals. Everyone felt as if there were a giant mountain weighing down upon them, making it extremely difficult to move. "Your spirit domain has also reached the spirit form stage," Luo Qinghai exclaimed. Immediately thereafter, bright blue light emerged over his body as he flew toward a certain direction, and everyone else also quickly dispersed in different directions upon seeing this. Through that battle against Zhao Jinhen, they had all experienced just how formidable a spirit form stage spirit domain was, and to compound their woes even further, Feng Tiandu's spirit domain seemed to be far more formidable than Zhao Jinhen's. The only silver lining was that Feng Tiandu had kept his spirit domain very small in order to avoid triggering the restrictions around the pill cauldron, so it wouldn't take long to fly out of the spirit domain. Han Li swept a sleeve through the air to recover his azure bamboo cloudswarm sword, then flew away into the distance with radiant golden light shining from his body. At the same time, he was channeling his time law powers into his azure bamboo cloudswarm swords, and arcs of golden lightning sprang out of the sword, lashing out at the black spirit domain up ahead. Right at this moment, Jin Tong flew out of his body, then transformed into a millstone-sized golden beetle in the blink of an eye. With a sweep of its two front legs, a flurry of streaks of translucent light were unleashed. In the face of Han Li and Jin Tong's combined powers, a gash was torn into the black spirit domain up ahead, and the two of them immediately flew toward the opening. "You're not getting away." Feng Tiandu harumphed coldly as he made a hand seal, and a pair of black chains appeared around his body amid a flash of black light. These were none other than the two origin separation law chains that he had sealed away. Han Li's expression changed drastically upon seeing this, and he immediately attempted to take evasive measures, but it was already too late. The pair of black chains shot forth like lightning, then wrapped themselves around him and Jin Tong, rendering both of them completely immobilized. With the emergence of these two origin separation law chains, the entire spirit domain began to ripple once again, while becoming even denser. Right at this moment, all of the 16 black chains around Feng Tiandu shot forth in unison, then vanished into thin air in the blink of an eye. In the next instant, numerous black chains emerged throughout the entire black domain, and they intertwined with one another to form a cage of chains in the blink of an eye, trapping everyone inside. Each person had several chains wrapped around them, and they were like flies stuck on a cobweb. Luo Qinghai had been tied up by black chains like everyone else. But he remained calm and collected as he said, "I didn't think that your spirit domain would have already reached the spirit form stage, but there's no way that you can maintain this spirit domain for long before you exhaust all of your law powers. Do not be intimidated, everyone." As he was speaking, bright blue light erupted from his entire body, and countless blue wave projections emerged within the blue light, clashing against the surrounding black light. These origin separation law chains could seal their immortal spiritual power, but it was unable to completely seal their law powers. All of the other golden immortals were also instilled with a sense of calmness upon hearing this, and they began to unleash their respective law powers to resist against the black chains, causing the cage of black chains to tremble and rattle incessantly. As a result, Feng Tiandu's complexion paled slightly, but he then gave a cold harumph before expelling an egg-sized ball of blood essence out of his mouth. Immediately thereafter, several drops of blood essence flew into every single one of the black chains in the spirit domain at his behest. Bursts of black light surged over the cage of black chains with this injection of blood essence, and it was gradually stabilized. In the case of Xiao Jinhen, he had only been able to elevate his spirit domain to the spirit form stage using those 5 stone pillars. Due to the fact that external assistance was at play, his spirit domain had been a little weaker than a normal spirit form stage spirit domain, but at the same time, it also made the spirit domain less taxing on him to maintain. In contrast, Feng Tiandu was unleashing this spirit form stage spirit domain solely through his own power, and he was facing so many golden immortals at once, so this was extremely taxing on both his immortal spiritual power and his law powers. All of you are important figures in our northern glacial immortal region, and today, you'll get to bear witness to my ascension to the high zenith stage. For that, I will grant all of you a quick and painless death," Feng Tiandu declared as he continued to maintain his spirit domain. "In your dreams, Feng Tiandu, even if I have to sacrifice the entirety of my cultivation base here, I won't let you have your way," Luo Qinghai roared in a furious voice. At the same time, he also expelled a mouthful of blood essence to bolster his spirit domain, expending a great deal of power in the process, and the black light on the surface of the cage of black chains began to flash erratically once again. Fellow Taoists, the high zenith pills are right in front of us. Are we just going to watch as Feng Tiandu takes them all for himself? I, for one, certainly won't just stand by and let him do as he pleases. Our Southern Dawn race will fight the Dawnfall sect to the death, the elderly woman yelled. Everyone else immediately sprang into action as well, redoubling efforts to free themselves from the black cage. I'll trap them here while you go secure the high zenith pills, Feng Tiandu said to Qi Tianxiao, paying no heed to the other golden immortals. Senior Marshal Brother, why don't we kill these people first, then take our time in securing the pills? Qi Tianxiao suggested through voice transmission as a cold gleam flashed through his eyes. Let's secure 1 or 2 high zenith pills first. Even though these people have been trapped by me, it's definitely not going to be an easy task to kill all of them. We have to prioritize securing the pills first, Feng Tiandu replied. Qi Tianxiao nodded in response, then immediately shot forth toward the golden puppet. At this point, the golden puppet was already quite far away, and it was no more than 10,000 feet away from the large golden chair on the raised platform. Qi Tianxiao rose up from the ground, then swept a sleeve through the air to release a streak of gray light, which contained a gray flying sword. The flying sword began to glow with radiant gray light, then abruptly transformed into dozens of threads of gray light that shot forth toward the golden puppet in unison. However, right at this moment, the golden patterns on the ground lit up, and a pillar of white flames erupted out of the ground, forming a wall of fire in front of the threads of gray light. A burst of scorching heat erupted out of the wall of white flames, causing the nearby space to twist and warp. As soon as the threads of gray light came into contact with the white wall of fire, they were instantly incinerated into nothingness. Qi Tianxiao's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately stopped cold in his tracks. Meanwhile, the golden puppet seemed to remain oblivious to everything that was happening as it continued to trudge toward the golden chair. Qi Tianxiao turned his gaze to the middle-aged man seated on the golden chair, and a thought suddenly sprang into his mind. Could it be that the puppet is going to offer the high zenith pill to that living corpse? With that in mind, an urgent look immediately flashed through his eyes. Who knew what was going to happen if the pill were given to that living corpse? The corrosive laws that he had mastered were naturally somewhat suppressed by flames of this nature, but it seemed that he had no choice but to force his way through. All the while, the golden puppet was drawing closer and closer to the golden chair. 400 feet. 350 feet. 300 feet. Large beads of sweat began to appear on Qi Tianxiao's forehead, and his mind was racing. All of a sudden, he laid a hand onto his waist, and a white ring emerged in his grasp amid a flash of white light. A pained look flashed through his eyes as he tossed the white ring through the air with one hand, while quickly casting an incantation seal with the other. The ring instantly began to radiate dazzling white light, while rapidly expanding to several times its original size, and countless runes were surging out of it in a frenzy. Light also began to converge at the center of the ring, instantly forming a white vortex with bursts of spatial power emanating from within. Meanwhile, all of the cultivators outside the High Zenith Palace had already found places to sit. The stone gate remained open, and the dazzling white light inside was unbearably bright. Occasionally, one of the cultivators would take a glance at the white stone gate with a hint of greed in their eyes, but no one stepped out of line. Not long after Han Li and the others entered through the stone gates, the rest of the vast Flow Palace cultivators also arrived on the scene, led by the fair-skinned scholar. After some discussion, everyone arrived at a temporary agreement, which was that if the cultivators of any side were to try and enter the High Zenith Palace, then they would immediately be attacked by everyone else. Among all of the cultivators present, the vast Flow Palace had the most formidable lineup, which included 4 golden immortals. Aside from them, there were also several true immortals among their ranks. Second came the Dawnfall sect, which had 3 golden immortals. Aside from them, the only ones left were Yun Nai and another one of the Blaze Dragon Dao Dao Lords, and the 2 of them were standing together, forming a triangular formation with the vast Flow Palace and Dawn Fall Sect's forces. Right at this moment, two of the Dawn Fall Sect Golden Immortals exchanged a glance with one another, and one of them suddenly suggested, "Fellow Taoists, I don't think the people inside are going to be coming out anytime soon, and sitting around like this is really unproductive. There may be other treasures to be found in this mountain range, so how about we leave some people behind while the rest of us go and do some exploring?" Peculiar looks appeared on everyone's faces upon hearing this. They had been ordered to stand on guard duty here, and that was their top priority, so there was no way that they could go wandering off now. "Not interested," the fair-skinned scholar of the vast Flow Palace said. "If you want to go, then you can go by yourselves." Yun Nai and the Blaze Dragon Dao Golden Immortal didn't say anything, but it was clear that they had no intention of leaving either. "Suit yourselves. In that case, we'll go on our own," the Golden Immortal of the Dawn Fall Sect said, then stood up with the other Golden Immortal, and both of them flew away into the distance, quickly vanishing out of sight. Yun Nai's brows were slightly furrowed as she watched them depart. Once the two of them had flown out of everyone else's spiritual sensory range, they immediately drew to a halt, then descended onto the ground in a secretive location. There, one of the Golden Immortals flipped a hand over to produce a white ring, and the two of them cast a string of incantation seals into the ring, upon which it began to rapidly expand, while giving off bursts of white light. Before long, a white vortex had appeared within the ring as well, and the two of them immediately flew into the vortex. After the two of them flew into the white ring, countless cracks instantly appeared over its surface, and it shattered before disintegrating into specks of white light. Inside the high Zenith Palace, Chi Tianxia was hovering in midair as he made a hand seal, and two streaks of light shot out of the white ring in front of him, then faded to reveal the pair of Golden Immortals from earlier. The expressions of Han Li and the others instantly darkened slightly as they saw this from afar. Following the arrival of the two Golden Immortals, countless cracks appeared over this white ring as well, and it was also shattered. The two Golden Immortals were rather taken aback by the sight that they were greeted by, and they both cupped their fists in a salute as they greeted, "Greetings, Sect Master, Grand Elder. No need for formalities. I've teleported the two of you in here as I need you to unleash your Sun-Moon Chaos Arts to help me break through this wall of fire," Chi Tianxia said. The two Golden Immortals knew that the situation was urgent, so they didn't ask any further questions, and they immediately split apart, then began to chant a collective incantation as black and white light emerged over their bodies. Both the black and white lights were giving off bursts of law fluctuations, and Han Li was quite intrigued by this. He could sense that these two bursts of law fluctuations were very special, and they were completely different from the five elemental laws that he was familiar with. The law power fluctuations emanating out of the white light were as radiant as the sun, while the black light's law fluctuations were dark and gloomy, but not cold or sinister in the slightest. Could these be laws related to yin and yang? Han Li speculated. Right at this moment, Jin Tong's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. "You're not actually trapped by these chains, are you, uncle?" He turned to discover that Jin Tong was still struggling with all its might, and golden light was flashing over its sharp claws as it hacked away viciously at the black chains. However, these black chains were extraordinarily resilient, rendering its struggles completely futile, so it could only turn to Han Li with a helpless expression. Han Li gave Jin Tong a subtle look, but offered no response outside of that. Jin Tong was ecstatic to see this, and it immediately urged, "So you do have a way to break out of these chains. Hurry and free me so I can go kill that old zombie." "Be quiet. The situation is really unclear right now, so we have to wait," Han Li hurriedly said through voice transmission. Even though his immortal spiritual power was restricted by this origin separation law chains, he was still able to use his time law powers, so it wasn't impossible for him to break free from these chains, but now wasn't the right time to do so. As Han Li and Jin Tong were communicating with one another, the two Dawn Fall sect golden immortals let loose a collective low roar, and the black and white light around them immediately shot forth toward the wall of fire as two pillars of light, one black and one white. The black and white pillars of light intertwined with one another before quickly fusing as one to form a black and white vortex. As the two golden immortals continued to make a rapid string of hand seals, the two bursts of law powers also fused together. The black and white vortex instantly swelled significantly in size, while the two bursts of law powers were also bolstered by about twofold in unison, and they struck the wall of fire with tremendous force. This was the first time that Han Li had seen two completely different types of law powers that could enhance each other, and he was very intrigued. At the same time, he was struck by a hint of enlightenment, as if he had just grasped a key point pertaining to the usage of law powers. But in this situation, he couldn't dwell on this train of thought for long, so he would just have to slowly explore it another time. The black and white vortex was revolving rapidly, while the wall of fire churned violently, and bursts of scorching flames surged toward the black and white vortex as if they had a mind of their own, trying to incinerate the vortex. However, the vortex was only becoming brighter and brighter as it flew rapidly into the wall of fire. A few seconds later, the black and white vortex was able to pierce straight through the wall of fire to open up a black and white passageway. At this point, the golden puppet was already no more than 150 feet away from the raised platform. Chi Tianxiao immediately shot through the black and white passageway as a streak of gray light, hurtling toward the golden puppet like lightning. He then swept a sleeve through the air to release the same gray jade scepter from before, and it swelled to the size of a house in the blink of an eye. A vast expanse of dense gray mist was swirling around the scepter, and there were countless gray runes interspersed throughout the mist as the scepter came crashing down upon the golden puppet. Meanwhile, the other two Dawn Fall sect golden immortals also flew through the black and white passageway before pouncing at the golden puppet. At the same time, both of them opened their mouths to release two streaks of light, one white and one black, and they contained a pair of large triangular flags. One flag was a pristine white color with a blazing sun embroidered onto its center, and it was giving off blinding white light, while the other flag was pitch black with a moon embroidered onto its surface, giving off a faint glow that was more subtle and profound. The two of them cast a string of incantation seals into the pair of flags, and they instantly transformed into a pair of massive balls of light. A sun was hovering within one of the balls of light, and a moon in the other, both of which were giving off immense auras. The two balls of light were giving off a thunderous rumbling sound as they hurtled toward the golden puppet from either side. Right at this moment, the golden puppet abruptly turned around to look at its assailants with a wooden expression, and bright golden light emerged over its body alongside a series of golden lightning veins. A loud crackling sound rang out as thick arcs of golden lightning emerged. There were countless lightning runes dancing within the arcs of lightning, and they were giving formidable law power fluctuations. Immediately thereafter, the golden puppet raised an arm before throwing a forceful punch, and a thick bolt of golden lightning erupted forth before striking the gray jade scepter. A resounding boom rang out as the jade scepter shuddered violently, then tumbled back through the air end over end. The dense gray mist that it was emitting was torn apart by the golden lightning, and the spiritual light that it was giving off was also a little scattered, indicating that its spiritual nature had been harmed. The golden puppet also shuddered violently, and only after stumbling back a few steps did it manage to steady itself. At the same time, The golden lightning surging over its body had also dimmed significantly. The two Dawnfall sect golden immortals were ecstatic to see this, and the two giant balls of light instantly transformed into two massive hands at their behest, one black and one white, before grabbing toward the golden puppet. Right at this moment, two gray humanoid figures suddenly joined the golden puppet in a wraith-like manner. As it turned out, two of the gray statues standing on either side of the palace had suddenly sprung to life, and yellow spirit patterns had appeared over the entirety of their bodies. The two statues were giving off radiant yellow light that was interspersed with bursts of tremendous law power fluctuations, and each of them was wielding a pair of yellow sabers, which they slashed through the air. Two pairs of giant yellow saber projections were sent flying through the air, crossing over one another to form a pair of huge crosses. Serrated edges appeared on the edges of the saber projections, giving them a menacing appearance, and they were giving off incredibly heavy law power fluctuations that caused all of the space in their wake to twist and warp violently. Two resounding booms rang out as the pair of giant hands were destroyed, reverting back into a pair of large flags that were sent flying back through the air. Meanwhile, the two gray statues remained completely still, like a pair of immovable mountains. Chi Tianxiao's trio was stunned to see this, as were Han Li and the others. Right at this moment, all of the gray statues on either side of the palace shot forth at once, landing at the center of the palace. There were somewhere between 40 to 50 of them in total, and they instantly surrounded Chi Tianxiao's trio. Trespassers must be killed. The statues roared in unison in a ghastly voice that resembled the sound of metal grating on metal. Powerful sound waves swept through the air in all directions, causing the entire palace to buzz and tremble. The sound waves converged from all directions, and ripples that were visible even to the naked eye appeared in the air, inundating Chi Tianxiao's trio. The three of them immediately began to tremble uncontrollably, as painful looks appeared on their faces. Right at this moment, bright yellow light began to radiate from the dozens of gray statues, and the yellow light quickly connected together to form a giant yellow go-board projection around the three golden immortals in the blink of an eye. Every single line on the go-board projection was giving off extremely heavy law power fluctuations, and these fluctuations were compounding upon one another. Encompassed within the go-board projection, Chi Tianxiao's trio instantly felt as if there were countless mountains weighing down upon them, and even with their golden, immortal stage powers, they were rendered completely immobilized. After successfully trapping the trio, the dozens of puppets slashed their blades through the air at once, unleashing a storm of saber and sword projections. At the same time, all of the golden patterns on the ground abruptly lit up, releasing bursts of white flames that instantly inundated the entire go-board projection, transforming it into a sea of flames. Waves of scorching heat spread in all directions, causing the nearby space to shimmer and warp, and even Han Li and the others in the distance were feeling the intense heat. All of this had taken place in the blink of an eye, and Han Li and the others were astonished by what they were seeing, but there was also no lack of schadenfreude in their expressions. "Thank heavens you didn't free me, uncle. It's much safer here than over there," Jin Tong said with a hint of lingering fear in its voice. Han Li offered no response, and it was unclear what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Feng Tiandu's expression had darkened significantly, and he wanted to assist his allies, but there was no way that he could leave after unleashing this cage of chains. Looking at the sea of flames before him, a hint of remorse welled up in his heart. If he had known that there were such formidable restrictions and puppets here, then he would have allowed Luo Qinghai and the others to test the waters first. However, thanks to his greed, he had turned everyone against him, and there was no longer any possibility for a peaceful resolution. Furthermore, They had to deal with these restrictions and puppets as well, and they were well and truly stuck between a rock and a hard place. Right at this moment, one part of the sea of fire rippled slightly, and a streak of gray light shot out before landing near the palace gates to reveal Chi Tianxiao. At this moment, his entire body was charred black, and most of his hair had also been incinerated. His complexion was extremely pale, and there was blood trailing down from the corners of his lips, giving him a very sorry appearance. After landing on the ground, Chi Tianxiao stumbled a few steps before steadying himself, and there was a hint of alarm and horror in his eyes. Meanwhile, the sea of white flames began to rapidly recede, and before long, it had entirely vanished into the ground. Shortly thereafter, the two large flags from earlier drifted down onto the ground, but the spiritual light emanating from them had completely faded, indicating that they had also been severely damaged. As for the other two Dawn-Fall sect golden immortals, they were nowhere to be seen, and it was clear that their bodies, nascent souls, and even their storage treasures had been incinerated into nothingness by the white flames, while only the pair of resilient immortal treasures remained. Feng Tiandu's expression darkened even further upon seeing this. Han Li and the others were also all astonished by the power of these white flames. Before long, the yellow light radiating from the dozens of gray statues also faded, as did the yellow board projection. The gray statues then turned and made their way back to their original spots before standing still again, and it was as if nothing had ever happened. Meanwhile, the golden puppet continued to step forward, and it quickly arrived in front of the golden chair, following which the silver pill flew out of its grasp and into the living corpse's mouth. Everyone could only watch as the pill rolled down into the living corpse's stomach, following which a layer of gentle green light quickly appeared over its body. A few seconds later, the green light faded, and the living corpse's aura was slightly elevated. Han Li and the others were all very surprised to see this. Right at this moment, another one of the dragons engraved onto the pill cauldron opened its mouth to release a burst of five-colored light. Almost at the exact same moment, yet another dragon did the exact same thing, and a vast golden cloud quickly took shape in the sky above the palace again, then transformed into a swirling golden vortex. A terrifying aura that was even more formidable than that of the previous pill tribulation erupted out of the golden vortex, and everyone was immediately struck by a sense of asphyxiation, as if there were a huge rock weighing down onto each of their chests. The immense pressure was weighing down upon the entirety of Feng Tiandu's spirit domain, so he was the one who was most heavily impacted. He felt as if he had been dealt a heavy blow to the chest, and his complexion instantly paled, while his spirit domain also began to ripple. Luo Qinghai immediately pounced on this opportunity, as radiant blue light emerged over his entire body, forming countless blue waves that swept toward the black spirit domain with tremendous power. An opening was blasted into the spirit domain, and a speck of blue light appeared beside Luo Qinghai's hand before shooting out of the opening like lightning, vanishing out of sight in the blink of an eye. Feng Tiandu immediately swung around and swept both sleeves through the air, releasing two balls of black light with countless runes flashing within them. The two balls of black light quickly fused into the spirit domain, instantly stabilizing it, while the opening that had been created by Luo Qinghai was mended. At the same time, bursts of black light converged to suppress the blue light around Luo Qinghai once again. A cold sneer appeared on Luo Qinghai's face as he began making a string of hand seals while chanting an incantation, and the blue light around his body formed a light barrier with countless wave projections flashing over its surface. "What did you do just now, Luo Qinghai?" Feng Tiandu asked in a cold voice. Luo Qinghai offered no response as he continued to make more hand seals, and the blue light barrier around him grew brighter and brighter. It was unable to keep out the origin separation law chains, but all of the surrounding black light was kept at bay. A cold look flashed through Feng Tiandu's eyes, but before he had a chance to do anything, two bursts of water droplet-like silver light emerged from within the golden vortex. Arcs of lightning were flashing incessantly over the burst of silver light, which then descended to fall upon the roof of the golden palace. A vast expanse of blinding silver light instantly enveloped the entire golden palace, and all of the rooms that riddled the palace instantly lit up once again, releasing dazzling golden radiance to keep the silver light at bay. The combination of silver and golden radiance was so bright that everyone was temporarily blinded. Ali. Meanwhile, the entrance of the stone gates at the center of the valley suddenly flashed momentarily, following which a streak of blue light flew out from within before shattering to form a blue light screen. Everyone's expressions changed slightly upon seeing this as they rose to their feet. The blue screen of light rippled momentarily, following which a clear image appeared on its surface, depicting the scene during which the two Dawnfall sect golden immortals had flown into the palace. Those bastards! They said they were going to explore the mountain range, but they actually snuck into the palace. The Dawnfall sect has broken the agreement. Everyone in the valley was furious, and they collectively turned to the only remaining Dawnfall sect cultivator present, an elderly golden immortal with a rotund frame. The elderly man seemed to have been prepared for this eventuality, and he immediately began spinning like a top, then fled into the distance as a ball of azure light. Everyone looked on with tightly furrowed brows, but no one set off to pursue him. Moments later, everyone turned their attention back to the entrance before them, then began to exchange glances with one another. Everyone, the Dawnfall sect has broken the agreement, so we should all disregard it as well. The golden immortal of the blaze dragon Dao declared, then immediately shot forth through the air, as if he were worried that the vast flow palace cultivators would try and intercept him, vanishing into the stone gates in the blink of an eye. Yun Nai took a glance at the four vast flow palace cultivators, then also flew through the stone gates as a streak of silver light. The vast flow palace cultivators made no attempt to stop them. With that, the only ones still left outside were the vast flow palace cultivators, and they exchanged a glance with one another, then made a series of hand seals to cast a string of incantation seals into the blue light screen. At the same time that the blue light screen emerged, they had received a secret message from Luo Qinghai through voice transmission. The light screen rippled slightly, then rapidly shrank down into a blue door of light. "Keep guarding the entrance," the fair-skinned scholar instructed as he turned to the true immortals of the vast flow palace. The true immortals instantly nodded in response, following which the four golden immortals flew into the blue door of light in a flash. Immediately thereafter, the door of light began to ripple before quickly beginning to fade away. Right at this moment, Yun Nai appeared out of thin air amid a flash of white light, much to the surprise of the vast flow palace true immortals. Yun Nai paid no heed to them at all as she also flew into the door of blue light, just in time before it completely faded out of existence, leaving the vast flow palace true immortals to stare at each other with bewildered expressions. Ali. Inside the palace, the vast expanse of dazzling silver light suddenly flashed momentarily before receding like the tide. All of the golden light within the palace faded away as well, and yet another pill tribulation was successfully negotiated. Two of the dragons engraved onto the pill cauldron opened their mouths, and a pair of high zenith pills shot out, filling the entire palace with a rich medicinal aroma once again. A hint of greed flashed through Feng Tiandu's eyes at the sight of the two pills. Right at this moment, two more golden puppets popped up, seemingly out of nowhere, then grabbed the pair of high zenith pills before making their way toward the golden chair once again. "Are you all right, Junior Marshal Brother?" Feng Tiandu asked through voice transmission. Chi Tianxiao took a deep breath, then replied, "I had to use a secret technique to escape from that sea of fire, so I'm feeling a little drained, but I managed to escape serious injury. At this point, I definitely won't settle for leaving this place empty-handed, and I'm sure the same goes for you as well. Luo Qinghai most likely did something just now to contact all of the golden immortals outside, and once those people get in here, we'll be in an even worse situation, so we must claim high zenith pill now," Feng Tiandu declared in a cold voice. "But the restrictions and those statues are far too powerful for me to contend with on my own," Chi Tianxiao said with slightly furrowed brows. "That's fine. From my observations, it seems like while those gray statues are very formidable, they don't appear to be very intelligent or adaptable. Here's the plan. I'll find a way to distract them, and you take the pills while they're distracted," Feng Tiandu said. "All right, I'll give it another shot," Chi Tianxiao replied after a brief hesitation. While the two of them were communicating with one another through voice transmission, Han Li took a glance at the other people around him. The situation in the palace seemed to be worsening by the second. He was confident that he would be able to free himself from these origin separation law chains, but it would take some time to do so, and continuing to allow himself to be trapped like this didn't seem to be a good idea. Right as Han Li was hesitating about whether this was the right time to break free from the origin separation law chains, Feng Tiandu suddenly raised both hands to cast a pair of incantation seals into two of the black chains, namely the ones wrapped around Taoist Hu Yan and Aoyang Qiushan. The two chains instantly began to glow brightly as countless black runes surged out of them, then converged to form a blurry black figure that was around half a foot tall. "That's a domain spirit." As soon as the domain spirit took shape, it immediately flew into the bodies of Taoist Hu Yan and Aoyang Qiushan in a flash. A series of black patterns instantly began to spread rapidly over their bodies, and their expressions changed drastically as they channeled their law powers to resist the invasive force with all their might, but to no avail. "Feng Tiandu, what did you do?" In the blink of an eye, the entirety of their bodies were covered in black patterns, and their auras already took on a drastic change. Immediately thereafter, the two of them were freed from the cage of chains and landed on the ground, but there was still a black chain connected to each of their dantians. "Go," Feng Tiandu instructed, and the two of them immediately flew toward the pill cauldron. A hint of elation appeared on Chi Tianxiao's face upon seeing this, and he quickly took a regenerative pill as a gray cloud began to emerge out of his body. Han Li immediately understood Feng Tiandu's intentions, and a cold look appeared on his face. He was quite close with Taoist Hu Yan to begin with, and the latter had just given him the next 3 levels of the mantra-treasured axis, so he definitely couldn't just watch him fall to his demise. With that in mind, golden light flashed over his body, yet right as he was about to do something, a blue door of light suddenly appeared at the entrance of the palace. The 4 vast flow palace golden immortals flew out from within, and they were clearly rather taken aback by the sight that they were greeted by. Immediately thereafter, Yun Nai flew out of the door of light as well, and the surprise on the faces of the 4 vast flow palace golden immortals became even more pronounced at the sight of her. As soon as Yun Nai appeared in the golden palace, she immediately spotted Taoist Hu Yan, and she conjured up a giant white snow lotus flower projection around herself, while a strange flying sword that resembled a lotus flower stem appeared in her hand. The lotus flower projection flew through the air, carrying her with it as she shot forth toward Taoist Hu Yan as quickly as she could. In this instant, it was as if she could see nothing but Taoist Hu Yan, and all of the surrounding perils were completely disregarded. "What a loyal woman you are," Feng Tiandu remarked with a cold sneer. At the same time, two black chains shot out of the black light barrier up above, then crossed over one another in midair before hurtling directly toward Yun Nai. "Look out," Taoist Huyen hurriedly called out in an alarmed voice. However, Yun Nai was desperate to save him, and even though she knew that an attack was descending upon her from above, she still refused to take evasive measures, instead accelerating even further on a straight-line trajectory toward Taoist Huyan. However, she was situated in Feng Tiandu's spirit domain, and there was no way that he would allow her to do as she pleased. Before she even had a chance to get close to Taoist Huyan, two more chains came flying at her from either side, and in conjunction with the pair of chains shooting down from above, all avenues for retreat and evasion were completely cut off. Right at this moment, a burst of bright golden light suddenly lit up on Han Li's chest. Immediately thereafter, the burst of golden light flickered slightly like a flame, then instantly transformed into a golden light barrier that encompassed the entire palace. Countless golden ripples appeared in the air above, and they were giving off a burst of tremendous law power fluctuations. In the instant that the chains converging toward Yun Nai came into contact with these golden ripples, they were instantly slowed down significantly. An incredulous look flashed through Yun Nai's eyes as she slipped through the gaps between the chains with ease, then arrived by Taoist Huyan's side. "Nice one, kid," Taoist Huyan exclaimed as he turned to take a glance back at Han Li. At this moment, they were the only two people in this entire palace who weren't affected by the golden spirit domain, while everyone else, including Feng Tiandu and Luo Qinghai, could feel a burst of pronounced time law powers hanging in the air. Everyone was greatly alarmed by this abrupt turn of events, and a furious look appeared on Feng Tiandu's face. At the same time, he pointed a finger directly at Han Li, and a black chain shot out of his sleeve, then hurtled toward Han Li's dantian at an incredible speed. "You want to seal my nascent soul away again. Shouldn't you know better than to try the same trick twice?" Han Li chuckled with a derisive sneer on his face. As soon as his voice trailed off, a streak of azure light abruptly appeared in front of him. It was an azure bamboo cloud swarm sword, and it swept directly toward the black chain around Han Li's body. Arcs of golden lightning flashed over the sword's surface, further enhancing its already peerlessly sharp aura as it crashed into the black chain with a loud clang. The chain was instantly snapped, then disintegrated into a plume of black mist that fused back into the black spirit domain. "Impossible." Feng Tiandu's expression changed drastically as he stared intently at the sword in Han Li's hand, and he was struggling to believe that just a single strike from this sword was able to sever his origin separation law chain. Unbeknownst to him, this was actually 3 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords fused as one. And that was the maximum number that Han Li could control at once. At this moment, the boundless sword chi emanating from the combined sword was far more formidable than the aura of any average immortal treasure. This seemed like quite a lengthy process, but in reality, all of it had taken place in an instant. After the chain around Han Li's body was snapped, the other black chain was already no more than an inch away from his lower abdomen, but all of a sudden, he abruptly vanished from the spot. As it turned out, in the same instant that he had freed himself from that chain, he had also unleashed his reversal true axis ability to drastically enhance his own speed. After evading the oncoming chain, he arrived by Jin Tong's side in a flash, then snapped the chain around her body as well with another slash of his sword. Feng Tiandu's expression darkened even further upon seeing this, and if it weren't for the fact that he had to remain on the spot to control everyone else, he would have immediately stormed at Han Li to strike him down. A complex look had also appeared on Luo Qinghai's face upon seeing this, and at this moment, The vast flow palace golden immortals that he had summoned into the palace were also moving around in a very slow and sluggish fashion under the effects of Han Li's spirit domain. After being freed from the black chain, Jin Tong took a moment to stretch out her limbs as she said, "About time, uncle. What do you need me to do? I'm itching for a fight." "Ignore him for now. Focus on getting me a high zenith pill first," Han Li hurriedly instructed. At this moment, everyone else was still trapped in Feng Tiandu's cage of chains, so this was the perfect opportunity for him to secure a high zenith pill. Jin Tong looked back and forth between Feng Tiandu and the pill cauldron for a moment, clearly feeling a little conflicted. In the end, she conceded, "Fine. I've been dying to sink my teeth into that pill cauldron this entire time, so I guess I'll just eat that first." Everyone present was astonished to hear this. Everyone had seen how she had eaten Xiao Jinhen's treasures and nascent souls, so they knew that she wasn't bluffing, and if she were to eat the cauldron now, then all of the remaining pills inside would be ruined. "No, don't do that," Luo Qinghai hurriedly yelled in a panicked voice. At the same time, the blue light around his body reared up in powerful blue waves, and it seemed that the chain wrapped around his body was about to burst apart at any moment. Feng Tiandu immediately refocused his efforts on bolstering his chains, making sure to keep Luo Qinghai firmly under control. After all, out of all of the people in this palace, Luo Qinghai was the one that he was most wary of. Feng Tiandu and Luo Qinghai possessed the most advanced cultivation bases among all of the golden immortals present, so even though they were also affected by Han Li's time spirit domain, the impact that it had on them was far less significant. Han Li was also feeling quite exasperated as he hurriedly called out, "There are still pills that are yet to be formed inside that cauldron, so you can't eat it." "I can't do this, I can't do that. What can I do? It's so annoying," Jin Tong grumbled to herself, and it was unclear whether she was going to follow Han Li's instruction as she flew directly toward the Sea of Fire. A cold sneer appeared on Qi Tianxiao's face upon seeing this, and he remained still on the spot as he observed Jin Tong from afar, making no effort to go after her. Given the childish nature that she had displayed, Qi Tianxiao presumed that she had no idea just how formidable that Sea of Fire was. Once she flew into it, she would undoubtedly suffer severe burns, and once that happened, he would swoop in and restrain her before slowly tamming her into his spirit pet over time. However, to his surprise, Han Li also set off after her, then appeared in front of her in a flash. He then made a strange hand seal, and a burst of silver flames emerged over the palms of his hands as he thrust them into the Sea of Fire. As soon as his hands came into contact with the edge of the Sea of Fire, his brows instantly furrowed tightly as an agonized look appeared on his face. These flames were far more formidable than he had anticipated. He spread his hands apart, and the silver flame instantly formed a ring-shaped fiery barrier that parted the surrounding flames to open up a circular hole that was slowly expanding. However, as he did this, his time spirit domain was clearly impacted, and everyone inside it was freed up a little. "Hurry up, I can't keep this up for long." Han Li's hands had already become bright red, and a large section of his sleeves had also been incinerated into ashes as he persevered with tightly gritted teeth. Jin Tong immediately spread her wings and flew toward the hole, but right at this moment, a cloud of dense gray mist suddenly surged toward her from the side, then appeared in front of her before taking on the form of Qi Tianxiao. "Piss off!" Jin Tong roared, but Qi Tianxiao refused to budge, releasing plumes of gray mist out of his sleeves, and the mist instantly transformed into 7 or 8 giant gray pythons that pounced at Jin Tong. Jin Tong was infuriated and immediately began attacking the gray pythons. Meanwhile, Han Li was struggling to hold on, and his hands had become virtually transparent, while his time-spirit domain was also becoming thinner and thinner. "Don't worry about me. Go and secure the high zenith pill," Luo Qinghai hurriedly yelled, and the four vast flow palace golden immortals immediately stopped in their tracks, then channeled their law powers to oppose Han Li's time-spirit domain as they rushed toward the pill cauldron. Luo Qinghai took a glance in that direction, then raised a question to Nan Keming through voice transmission. "Have you found a way to break the restriction?" Nan Keming shook his head in response. "I've managed to spot a few weak points, but I haven't been able to think of a way to break the restriction yet." "That's fine. Just tell those four the weak points that you've spotted so they at least have some targets," Luo Qinghai replied. Even though the conversation was taking place through voice transmission, Feng Tiandu could see that they were plotting something, and he mused, "Looks like this disciple of yours has some interesting abilities, Grand Palace Master Luo. No wonder you bring him with you everywhere you go." He made a hand seal as he spoke, and a black chain shot out of his robes before instantly piercing into Nan Keming's dantian. The nascent soul inside was immediately sealed away by an origin separation law chain, while the light in his eyes instantly faded. "Menger," Luo Qinghai called out as his expression changed drastically. At the same time, the blue light radiating from his body became even brighter, and they crashed against the origin separation law chain around him like an endless barrage of waves. Feng Tiandu's expression remained unchanged, as he injected more immortal spiritual power into his chains to suppress Luo Qinghai. But internally, he was feeling very frustrated. Never had he imagined the restrictions around the pill cauldron would be this formidable, to the point that two of his sect's golden immortals had met their demise here without even being able to put up a fight. As a result, the overall power of the Dawn Fall sect was significantly diminished, and it was now the vast Flow Palace that had the upper hand. On top of that, Han Li was also proving to be very troublesome, so there was a good chance that his plans could be completely foiled here. Before he had a chance to fully suppress Luo Qinghai, a resounding boom suddenly rang out from the chain that was connected to Taoist Hu Yan's body. Yun Nai's lotus branch fire sword had been inserted into the chain, no more than a foot away from Taoist Hu Yan's lower abdomen, and the pink floral projection it abruptly bloomed before exploding, instantly snapping the black chain. At the same time, Yun Nai drifted down from above with blood trickling down from the corner of her lips as she stumbled backward. Taoist Hu Yan immediately arrived by her side to catch her, and there was a pained look in his eyes as he yelled, "What are you doing? Don't be so reckless." "I'm fine as long as you're all right," Yun Nai said in a gentle voice as she wiped the blood from the corner of her lips. Taoist Hu Yan's brows were tightly furrowed, and he wanted to say something more, but she shook her head to stop him. Not far away from them, Aoyang Qiushan was still involuntarily charging toward the sea of fire, but his gaze had been fixed on Taoist Hu Yan this entire time with a hint of envy and sorrow in his eyes. Taoist Hu Yan and Yun Nai exchanged a glance with one another, following which the two of them arrived on either side of Aoyang Qiushan in a flash. With a flick of her wrist, Yun Nai sent a red streamer flying through the air, and it wrapped itself tightly around Aoyang Qiushan to lock him firmly into place. At the same time, Taoist Hu Yan made a grabbing motion, and a fiery flying sword appeared in his grasp. He raised the sword up high before slashing it down upon the black chain that was protruding out of Aoyang Qiushan's dantian, and a thin crimson line instantly appeared on the chain before it was split into two. "You have my thanks." Aoyang Qiushan gave the two of them a grateful nod, as the black patterns all over his body slowly faded. Feng Tiandu's expression darkened even further upon seeing this, and he made a beckoning motion with one hand, upon which the two origin separation law chains that had been severed by Han Li returned to his grasp. "Finally, I've recovered the full set," Feng Tiandu murmured to himself as he stroked the pair of chains. He then raised a hand, and the two chains instantly reared up like a pair of spirit snakes, then crawled up into his sleeve before trailing down onto the ground like his other chains. Feng Tiandu took a glance down at the chains beneath him, following which he raised his head and began to cackle in a gravelly voice. He reached out with both hands, and blood began to gather between his fingers before flowing down onto the black chains beneath him. A burst of crimson light spread over the chains, and a burst of urgent clattering suddenly rang out as countless dark red chains swept over the ground like an enormous mass of spirit snakes. Luo Qinghai and the others, who were still trapped in the cage of chains, were instantly wrapped up in layers upon layers of additional chains, encasing each of them in a dark red cocoon. Taoist Huyan immediately turned his sword upside down upon seeing this, then pierced the tip of the sword into the ground. A crimson light barrier instantly spread from the tip of his sword, and it was giving off waves of scorching heat that forced back the oncoming chains. Meanwhile, each of the four vast Flow Palace golden immortals was holding a jade badge, all of which were radiating dazzling blue light, forming a square crystal house that also kept the chains at bay. What do we do? One of the vast Flow Palace golden immortals, an elderly man, asked as he took a hesitant glance in Luo Qinghai's direction. The palace master told us to prioritize securing the pills, so we'll just have to follow his instruction, the fair-skinned scholar replied. With that, the four golden immortals began to discuss ways to ward off the sea of fire to secure the high zenith peals within. Meanwhile, Jin Tong felt like the palace was too confined a space for her to fight Qi Tianxiao to her heart's content, so the two of them had taken their battle outside of the palace. With the mass of dark red chains rapidly closing in on him, Han Li could only heave a faint sigh as he withdrew his hands, and with that, the opening in the sea of fire slowly sealed itself again. Immediately thereafter, he flew over to Taoist Huyan's trio, then summoned a pair of immortal origin stones, which he was using to replenish his immortal spiritual power. At the same time, he had also already withdrawn his time spirit domain, simultaneously maintaining his spirit domain, using 3 azure bamboo cloudswarm swords at once, and releasing his flame of essence had been extremely taxing on his immortal spiritual power. Now that the gold-devouring immortal is gone, it's time for us to settle the score, Feng Tiandu said as he cast his gaze toward Han Li with burning fury in his eyes. As he was speaking, he began to drift toward Han Li and the others, while his lower body was concealed within the sea of Haines down below. Your time law powers confirms it. You were the one who killed my disciples, weren't you? Feng Tiandu asked in a cold voice as he glowered intently at Han Li. That's right, Han Li replied in a calm manner. Don't think that you have a right to get cocky just because you've developed a half-assed mastery over the laws of time. I'll send you to your grave right here and now. Feng Tiandu threatened in a dark voice. You killed 2 of his disciples. Well done. I'll have to treat you to a cup of wine for that alone, Taoist Huyan jibed. I want an entire flagon, Han Li negotiated with a smile. Deal, Taoist Huyan immediately chuckled as he tightened his grip around his longsword. Right at this moment, Aoyang Qiushan took a glance at the pill cauldron, then exclaimed in an urgent voice, We have to hurry. Those 2 pills are about to be fed to that living corpse. Taoist Huyan was just about to respond when Han Li said, Focus on breaking the restriction and securing the pills. In the meantime, I'll show Grand Elder Feng here just how cocky I can get with my half-assed mastery over the laws of time. As soon as his voice trailed off, he shot out of Taoist Huyan's fiery spirit domain, charging toward Feng Tiandu alone. Yun Nai and Aoyang Qiushan were both quite startled by this, and they turned to Taoist Huyan with surprised expressions. There's no need to worry about him. Let's go secure the pills, Taoist Hu Yan said with a smile. After that, the three of them really did abandon Han Li to face Feng Tiandu on his own, while they began to devise a plan to break the fiery restriction. However, what everyone failed to notice was that one of the cocoons of chains not far away from the palace gates had suddenly toppled over, and the pile of dark red chains had clattered down onto the ground to reveal that the person who was supposed to be trapped inside was nowhere to be seen. Almost at the exact same moment, a figure silently emerged above the undulating sea of chains to the right of the palace, then rushed toward a corner of the palace, and it was none other than that elderly woman from the Southern Dawn race. At this point, her golden cane had already disappeared, and it was replaced in her grasp by a palm-sized yellow badge that had a very irregular shape. The badge was riddled with layers upon layers of strange runes, which were giving off peculiar law power fluctuations. There was a layer of dark red light over her body, and she was traveling at an extraordinary speed, leaving a crimson shadow in her wake. Before anyone else had a chance to react, she had already arrived in front of the sea of fire. Once there, she immediately tossed the yellow badge forward, and it vanished into the sea of fire in the blink of an eye. As soon as the badge entered the flames, it immediately melted away as if it were made from wax, and a series of runes flew out of it before fusing into the surrounding flames. On the other side of the palace, a string of loud clangs rang out as a barrage of dark red chains shot through the air like crimson spears, raining down upon Han Li with tremendous force. Han Li was holding his azure bamboo cloudswarm sword in one hand, while silver light surged over his body, and he was whizzing through the air in a wraith-like fashion, evading the barrage of dark red chains with ease. Feng Tiandu was becoming more and more frustrated by the second, and he began charging forward himself while making a string of hand seals, sending countless black chains shooting toward Han Li from all directions out of his black spirit domain. At the same time, he made a beckoning motion with one hand, and a dark red chain abruptly sprang up from beneath Han Li's feet like a spitting viper, and its sharp tip was giving off a cold flame as it pierced toward his ankle. Han Li had already anticipated such an attack, and he slashed his long sword downward, releasing a bolt of golden lightning that struck the dark red chain in the blink of an eye. The bolt of lightning shot through the chain as an electric current, rapidly spreading through all of the chains in a large area to form a sea of golden lightning. As soon as Feng Tiandu flew into the sea of lightning, he felt as if he had jumped into a pot of scalding oil, and he involuntarily let loose an agonized howl. Everyone's attention was instantly drawn to him upon hearing this, and even the elderly woman from the Southern Dawn race had temporarily diverted her gaze away from the sea of fire. A hint of befuddlement flashed through her eyes as she took a glance at Han Li, following which she returned her gaze to the sea of fire before her. Right at this moment, the flames that the yellow badge had just melted into suddenly began to contract drastically, forming a series of tiny crimson flames. The elderly woman's eyes immediately lit up upon seeing this, and she shot through the opening in a flash. She was immediately followed by the four vast flow palace golden immortals, who attempted to pass through the opening after her, but as soon as they got close, the opening was abruptly sealed again, and the flames almost swallowed up the golden immortal that was leading the way out of the four. What is that badge? It seemed to have contained some type of law powers, Yun Nai mused with a puzzled expression. Could it be the laws of fire? Ouyang Qiushan speculated with furrowed brows. No, I don't know what it is, but I can sense that it's not the laws of fire. In any case, let's focus on breaking this restriction, Taoist Hu Yan replied with a shake of his head. Meanwhile, the elderly woman had only just charged into the sea of fire when she was confronted by a pair of white humanoid figures. The yellow spirit patterns on their bodies were glowing brightly, and each of them was holding a standard yellow saber as they rushed at her from the left and the right. Layers of ripples were spreading through the surrounding space, and a burst of extremely heavy law power fluctuations were converging from both directions, as if there were a pair of mountain faces closing in on the elderly woman. The elderly woman could feel the air constrict around her, and right at this moment, a burst of dark red light shot out of her body, then instantly swelled to form a spirit domain that was over 100 feet in radius, just large enough to encompass the two gray puppets. Immediately thereafter, a series of thin dark red threads emerged in the space within the spirit domain, and they shot forth toward all of the gray puppets' joints. The dark red threads were able to pierce through the bodies of the seemingly indestructible puppets with ease, making them appear like a pair of wooden puppets on strings. However, what was rather strange was that their movements weren't affected at all, and they continued to charge at the elderly woman, compressing the air around her to such an extent that her robes were tightly pressed against her body. The elderly woman's eyes narrowed slightly, and she crossed her hands over, upon which two of the thin threads that had pierced into the gray puppets abruptly stretched taut, yanking their heads backward. "There it is," she murmured to herself as she made a rapid string of hand seals, and the pair of gray puppets instantly stiffened as bursts of yellow light lit up on the backs of their necks, flowing incessantly along the pair of dark red threads before dissipating into the air. As the yellow light faded, so did the yellow spirit patterns on the puppets' bodies, and by the time the yellow light was completely gone, the pressure weighing down upon the elderly woman was also completely lifted. Without their earth law powers, the two gray puppets could no longer pose any impediment to the elderly woman, and she passed between them in a flash, charging directly at the pill cauldron behind them. The two golden puppets who were carrying the high zenith pills to the living corpse seemed to have sensed her approach, and they both swung around at once before each throwing an almighty punch. Countless lightning runes surged over their fists, and a golden vortex took shape at the center, releasing a burst of peculiar suction force that acted upon the elderly woman's body. At the same time, the gray stone statues standing on either side of the palace began to move as yellow light emerged over their bodies, while the giant yellow go-board projection was also beginning to take shape. "What a fool!" the elderly golden immortal from the vast flow palace scoffed with a cold sneer on his face. However, as soon as his voice trailed off, he felt a blur flash past his eyes, immediately following which the elderly woman appeared at the foot of the raised platform that held the large golden chair, having passed through between the pair of golden puppets in the blink of an eye. The golden vortex between them was already nowhere to be seen, and there were only some thin arcs of golden lightning flashing through the air, but they no longer held any degree of significant power. As for the yellow go-board projection, it didn't even have a chance to activate before she was already past it. Everyone was astonished to see this, and their attention was instantly drawn to the elderly woman. Meanwhile, Feng Tiandu had already emerged from Han Li's sea of golden lightning, and he seemed to have realized that Han Li was not an opponent to be taken lightly, so he was taking a more patient approach, temporarily engaging in a standoff against Han Li. Both of them also had their attention drawn to what was happening on the other side of the palace, and to their befuddlement, they noticed that two golden puppets were still each holding a high zenith pill. For some reason, the elderly woman hadn't taken those pills as she was passing by the puppets. Instead, she strode directly onto the stone platform, then flipped a hand over to produce a black pill that was giving off hints of law power fluctuations. "That's an origin void pill." Han Li was immediately able to identify the pill as none other than the origin void pill that he had personally refined, and he cast his gaze toward the elderly woman with slightly furrowed brows. "What are you doing?" Feng Tiandu yelled as his expression changed drastically. The elderly woman turned around to take a glance at everyone, following which a peculiar smile appeared on her face, and she pinched the living corpse's chin between her fingers, then tilted its head back before feeding it the Origin Void pill. The pill slid straight down into the living corpse's stomach, which the elderly woman observed it intently with anticipation in her eyes. As for everyone else, they were all looking on in befuddlement. Several seconds of silence passed by, and everyone was staring at the living corpse, unsure of what was going to happen next. However, even after a long wait, nothing happened, and the living corpse remained seated on the golden chair in a completely still manner. How could this be? The elderly woman murmured to herself in incredulity as the excitement and anticipation in her eyes slowly faded. Everyone heaved a collective sigh of relief upon seeing this, thinking that it was only a false alarm, while Feng Tiandu and Han Li returned their attention to the battle at hand. However, right at this moment, a burst of gray light suddenly emerged from the living corpse's body, and it instantly spread forth like a spirit domain, sending gusts of fierce wind sweeping in all directions. The elderly woman was instantly sent flying by the ferocious wind, crashing into a gray puppet with a loud thump. The green pill cauldron also shuddered violently, and only after a burst of green light had flashed over its surface did it manage to stabilize itself again. On top of that, the golden and gray puppets were swept off their feet by the tremendous force as well, and even the outermost layer of the sea of fire erupted outward before exploding violently. The vast flow palace cultivators hurriedly sprang back in retreat, but Taoist Hu Yan did the exact opposite, flipping a hand over to produce an antiquated oil lamp that was lit with a golden flame, then flew straight into the raging sea of fire. It appeared that Yun Nai wasn't tipped off in advance, and an alarmed look appeared on her face as she yelled, "Hu Yan!" Han Li immediately peered into the spirit domain with his bright-sight spirit eyes, but he was unable to see anything aside from a vast expanse of gray mist. Moments later, the gray mist slowly scattered, and Taoist Hu Yan shot out in a flash, then landed beside Yun Nai. However, his clothes were in tatters, his entire body was charred black, and his beard had been entirely incinerated away. Despite his sorry appearance, there was a smile on his face as he said to Yun Nai through voice transmission, "I managed to get one high zenith pill, but those golden puppets are too strong, so I didn't dare to try and get another one." "Don't ever do that to me again," Yun Nai scolded with a stern glare. Once all of the dust had settled, the living corpse on the golden chair was revealed once again. It was still seated in a completely still manner, and it seemed that nothing had changed, but the aura that it was giving off was already completely different. In the blink of an eye, the two golden puppets appeared beside the chair, and one of them fed another high zenith pill into the living corpse's mouth, while the other puppet remained still on the spot with half of its body charred black and an arm missing. After swallowing the second high zenith pill, a layer of light emerged over the living corpse's body, and its aura swelled even further. At the same time, the two golden puppets joined the one that had delivered the first high zenith pill, and the three of them formed a protective encirclement around the living corpse. Han Li raised an eyebrow upon seeing this, following which he took a glance at Taoist Hu Yan, just in time to see him remove the cloth pouch that he had been carrying this entire time from his back, before lifting a corner of the pouch and quickly tossing the high zenith pill inside. A hint of surprise flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and he immediately shot back in retreat as a streak of azure light, not wishing to prolong this battle against Feng Tiandu any further. "You're not getting away," Feng Tiandu roared in a furious voice, yet right as he was about to give chase, a pillar of blue light suddenly erupted into the heavens from behind him. A tremendous aura was emanating from the pillar of blue light, causing the entire palace to tremble and sway. At the center of the pillar of blue light was none other than Luo Qinghai. At this moment, his entire body was basked in radiant blue light, and rippling blue radiance was surging out of his body, sweeping outward in all directions, while the chains around him were loosened significantly. Feng Tiandu's expression darkened slightly, and he was forced to abandon his chase of Han Li to focus on Luo Qinghai, releasing a burst of black light from his sleeve to bolster the chains around him. Out of all of the people here, Luo Qinghai posed the biggest threat to him, so he couldn't allow him to break free no matter what. All of the chains instantly lit up, then began to squirm and constrict like living creatures. "It's too late to try and restrain me now," Luo Qinghai harumphed coldly as he made a hand seal, and the pillar of blue light around him brightened even further, remaining still and resolute in the face of the constricting chains. At the same time, he began chanting an incantation, and his lower body instantly transformed into a blue serpentine tail, while his upper body took on a half-human, half-snake appearance, while his aura also swelled drastically. In the blink of an eye, Han Li appeared beside Taoist Hu Yan, and the latter gave him a grateful nod as he said, "Thank you for keeping Feng Tiandu occupied, fellow Taoist Li." Han Li merely gave a faint smile in response, and his gaze lingered for a moment on the yellow cloth pouch on Taoist Hu Yan's back, which was tightly sealed, making it impossible to see what was inside. A curious look flashed through Han Li's eyes, but he didn't ask any questions as he turned his gaze toward Luo Qinghai, upon which he was quite startled by the sight of Luo Qinghai's new form. A layer of translucent blue light surfaced over Luo Qinghai's body as he struggled with all his might, and he was quickly shedding the chains around him. Feng Tiandu's pupils contracted slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately swept a sleeve through the air, upon which dozens of thick black chains appeared around him. The tips of these chains were extremely sharp, and they were giving off a cold black gleam, giving them the appearance of a series of black spears. There were also countless black runes dancing over the chains, giving off incredibly formidable law power fluctuations. "Go!" Feng Tiandu made a hand seal, and all of the black chains instantly shot forth like arrows out of crossbows, launching themselves at Luo Qinghai. In response, Luo Qinghai flipped a hand over to produce a dark blue bead, which was giving off a formidable aura. There appeared to be a tiny blue half-snake, half-humanoid figure sealed within the bead, but it couldn't be clearly seen due to excessively bright radiance that the bead was releasing. A slightly pained look appeared in his eyes, but he still swallowed the bead without any hesitation, and in the next instant, the blue light radiating from his body began to flash erratically, while streams of dark blue light surged through his body. Right at this moment, the oncoming black chains arrived, piercing through the pillar of blue light with ease before punching through Luo Qinghai's body as well. In the blink of an eye, countless holes were stabbed into his body, but not even a single drop of blood flowed out, much to Feng Tiandu's surprise. A cold sneer appeared on Luo Qinghai's face, and the blue light radiating from his body abruptly exploded outward as a series of ripples. At the same time, an ancient incantation rang out, and it felt as if the language being used had existed since the beginning of time. Feng Tiandu's expression darkened slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately switched to a different hand seal. The black chains around him flashed with black light once again, then shot forth through the air, piercing through the blue ripples in a frenzy, but in complete futility. Meanwhile, Luo Qinghai's chanting was becoming louder and louder, and pillars of blue water were shooting out of the surrounding space before fusing into the blue waves. In the blink of an eye, a ball of blue water the size of a lake appeared, taking up close to half of the entire palace. Light flashed at the center of the lake, and a ball of blue light emerged, containing a massive humanoid figure inside. The figure was several hundred feet tall, and it had the upper body of an imposing middle-aged man, wearing a loose-fitting blue robe that left his wide chest and sturdy shoulders exposed. The man also had a long and curly blue beard that trailed all the way down to his chest. However, the man's lower body was a thick blue serpentine tail that was coiled several times and at least 1,000 feet in length. The man had a set of extremely authoritative facial features, giving him the appearance of an ancient water god, and he was also giving off a tremendous aura that surpassed the golden immortal stage, keeping the surrounding black spirit domain at bay. His aura has already reached the high zenith stage. In the distance, Han Li and the others were all astonished to see this, and a hint of shock flashed through Feng Tiandu's eyes as well. At this moment, Luo Qinghai was standing inside the projection of the giant blue man with radiant blue light glowing from his body, giving him a majestic and untouchable appearance. All of a sudden, he raised a hand before casting an incantation seal, and the eyes of the giant blue man abruptly sprang open. Arcs of blue lightning were flashing within his eyes as the blue man raised a hand of his own, upon which a blue staff appeared in his grasp. The staff was glowing so radiantly that it was impossible to make out its exact shape, and the giant blue man lashed out with the staff at Feng Tiandu from afar. A giant blue staff projection appeared, and there were countless arcs of blue lightning flashing over its surface, giving off a burst of devastating power. In this instant, it was as if the staff were the only thing that existed between heaven and earth. Even from outside the spirit domain, Han Li and the others could clearly sense the formidable aura of the staff, and they immediately darted back in retreat. The giant staff projection appeared to be moving very slowly, but in the eyes of Feng Tiandu, who was directly facing the attack, it was moving at lightning speed, striking his black spirit domain without giving him any time to react. His black spirit domain rippled violently before exploding, and all of the black chains inside the spirit domain were also snapped, freeing the elderly man from the Southern Dawn race, the other golden immortal of the Blaze Dragon, and Nan Kemeng. The three of them were ecstatic, and they immediately flew away in different directions. After destroying the spirit domain, a significant amount of the staff projection's power seemed to have been expended, and it shrank down to just over half its original size, but it was still crashing down toward Feng Tiandu with unstoppable might. All of this had taken place over the span of just a few seconds, and Feng Tiandu let loose an involuntary muffled groan upon having his spirit domain destroyed, seemingly having suffered some severe internal injuries. His expression changed drastically at the sight of the oncoming staff projection, and he shot back in retreat while making a frantic string of hand seals. A black scroll flew out of his body, then unfurled itself to reveal that a lone, steep black mountain was painted upon it. The scroll released countless rays of black light, while the black mountain that was depicted shuddered violently, then flew out of the scroll and rapidly swelled to over 1,000 feet with black mist swirling all around it. The black mist around the mountain was filled with countless black runes that were giving off an incredibly heavy aura, and it was clear that this was a formidable treasure. As soon as the black mountain appeared, the staff projection also arrived, and the black mist around the mountain was instantly scattered upon contact amid an earth-shattering boom. In the instant that the two collided, a vast explosion of blue and black light instantly erupted in all directions, and the entire mountain shuddered violently. Countless cracks began to appear on its surface, following which it exploded with tremendous force, sending countless loose rocks flying in all directions, while the black scroll was also torn into two. However, the blue staff projection had also expended all of its power up to this point, and it flashed a few times before fading away. Even though Feng Tiandu wasn't struck by the giant staff projection, he was still sent flying back several thousand feet by the shockwaves resulting from the clash, and a stunned look flashed through his eyes after he steadied himself. Meanwhile, the projection of the giant blue figure rapidly shrank down before fading altogether to reveal Luo Qinghai. At this point, he had already reverted back to his human form, and there were rings of incredibly dense blue light surging out of his body, but his complexion was extremely pale. The four vast Flow Palace golden immortals and Nan Keming hurriedly flew over to his side, before forming a protective encirclement around him. "I'm fine," Luo Qinghai reassured as he flipped a hand over to produce a golden pill, which he promptly devoured. An intrigued look flashed through Han Li's eyes as he noticed that the aura emanating from the pill was rather similar to that of the Golden Soul pill. A burst of golden light flashed over Luo Qinghai's face, and his complexion quickly returned to normal. Meanwhile, the battle between Jin Tong and Qi Tianxiao was still raging, and a resounding clash took place between the two. Jin Tong was sent flying by an eruption of gray light, while Qi Tianxiao was looking a little pale as he also shot back through the air as a streak of gray light. As for Jin Tong, she was sent flying back several hundred feet, but she was completely unscathed, much to Qi Tianxiao's concern and dismay. A furious roar erupted out of her mouth as she prepared to clash against Qi Tianxiao once again, but Han Li's voice suddenly rang out from beside her ears. "Come back, Jin Tong." Jin Tong hesitated momentarily, then made a series of threatening gestures at Qi Tianxiao before flying back to Han Li's side. At this point, the golden immortal from the Blaze Dragon Dao had also arrived on the scene, and they were all gathered in a corner of the palace. Meanwhile, Qi Tianxiao arrived by Feng Tiandu's side with a concerned expression, and the latter promptly devoured a black pill, upon which his complexion began to slowly recover. At the same time, the elderly man from the Southern Dawn race flew through the air as a streak of crimson light, before landing beside the elderly woman. With that, four distinct groups of cultivators were formed, and all of them were looking at one another, but none of them were in a hurry to make the first move. Jin Tong flew back to Han Li's side before landing on his shoulder, then cast her gaze toward the two golden immortals from the Blaze Dragon Dao. "When did these two show up? Are they good people? Are they strong?" Jin Tong asked. A peculiar look flashed over the faces of both golden immortals upon hearing this. Han Li raised an eyebrow as he cast his gaze toward Taoist Hu Yan with an inquisitive look in his eyes. This was something that he wanted to ask as well. It seemed that the two golden immortals were allies of theirs, but he didn't know whether that was confirmed to be the case. The situation was too chaotic earlier, so I wasn't able to explain everything to you. But Dao Lord Aoyang and I have actually already made an agreement some time ago to join forces in the Immortal manner, Taoist Hu Yan explained. "Fellow Taoist Li, I didn't think that you would already be at the golden immortal stage. Congratulations," Aoyang Qiushan said as he cupped his fist in a salute. Han Li's mind was racing as he smiled and nodded in response. "You're far too kind, Dao Lord Aoyang. We were all part of the Blaze Dragon Dao at one point, so let's continue to work together from here onward." Aoyang Qiushan and Taoist Hu Yan were both very pleased to see that Han Li was willing to accept this arrangement. Han Li had shown himself capable of opposing Feng Tiandu on his own, and on top of that, he had a golden immortal stage gold devouring immortal on his side, so he was definitely a powerful ally. With his cooperation, they now had a total of 6 golden immortals, making the most formidable camp present, and that was naturally going to be immensely beneficial for their plight in securing more high zenith pills. "Having said that, there's something that I want to establish in advance," Han Li suddenly said. "Please go ahead, fellow Taoist Li," Taoist Hu Yan hurriedly prompted. "We may all be working together right now, but the high zenith pills that each of us secure still go to ourselves, right?" Han Li asked. Yang Qiushan's expression changed slightly upon seeing this. However, before he had a chance to say anything, Taoist Hu Yan replied, "Of course. We're only joining forces to ward off the enemies present, but it's still up to ourselves to secure high zenith pills." Yang Qiushan's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, and he exchanged a subtle glance with the other Blaze Dragon Dao Golden Immortal. They were currently the two weakest cultivators in the group, so they had the worst chances of securing high zenith pills, but seeing as both Taoist Hu Yan and Han Li approved of this arrangement, they had no choice but to agree as well. "Good," Han Li said as a faint smile appeared on his face, following which he turned his gaze back to the green pill cauldron. He had already fulfilled his promise of helping Taoist Hu Yan secure a high zenith pill, so he no longer had any qualms. Meanwhile, Luo Qinghai was also observing Han Li's group with a hint of wariness in his eyes. At this point, only 3 of the 9 high zenith pills had emerged, so there were still 6 left, and no one was in any hurry to strike. The Dawnfall sect only had 2 people left, and Feng Tiandu had already displayed all of his trump cards. On top of that, he was undoubtedly severely taxed after that grueling battle, so he was no longer a cause for concern. Instead, it was actually Han Li's camp that posed the biggest threat, given his time, law domain, and the gold-devouring Immortal on his side. Han Li and the others all bristled slightly at the sight of the rather unfriendly gaze that Luo Qinghai was directing their way. Just now, Luo Qinghai had displayed high zenith stage power to break Feng Tiandu's spirit domain, and even though his aura had subsided since then, everyone was still quite wary of him. "Be careful of Luo Qinghai, everyone. He possesses the bloodline of the true spirit Hua Serpent. One, if I'm not mistaken, he must have devoured the true spirit core of a high zenith stage Hua Serpent just now, thereby allowing him to forcibly elevate his own cultivation base to the high zenith stage. Of course, in that form, he can't compare with a true high zenith cultivator, but he's still not to be underestimated," Taoist Hu Yan informed Han Li and the others through voice transmission. Everyone's expressions changed slightly upon hearing this. Han Li had once read some records pertaining to true spirit cores, so he knew that they were the origins of a true spirit being's bloodline. Once a normal cultivator perished, it was very difficult for someone else to use their body of nascent soul, but this was different in the case of true spirit cores. As long as one possessed the same bloodline, they would be able to use a true spirit core to unleash power far beyond their own. However, this was quite a risky move to make, and it was also very taxing on one's spiritual sense. Han Li took a glance at Luo Qinghai, then asked through voice transmission, "Fellow Taoist Hu Yan, in your opinion, has Luo Qinghai completely exhausted the power of that true spirit core?" "I don't think so. Given how cunning he is, I'm sure he wouldn't prematurely show his hand, so we have to be careful," Taoist Hu Yan warned in a solemn voice. Everyone immediately nodded in response. Han Li then took a glance at Feng Tiandu's duo before quickly shifting his gaze to the pair of Southern Dawn beings, upon which a peculiar look flashed through his eyes. "Do you know those two, fellow Taoist Li?" Taoist Hu Yan asked as he noticed the direction of Han Li's gaze. "No," Han Li replied with a shake of his head. The pill that the elderly woman had brought out was most definitely an origin void pill. He had personally refined that pill, so there was no mistaking it. However, at the time, he had given the pill to Worm 3, so how had it fallen into this woman's hands? Could it be that this was Worm 3 in disguise? The only problem with that theory was that the cultivation base didn't seem to match up. We need to keep an eye on those two, especially that woman. She was able to avoid those stone statues just now with ease. But they don't seem to be interested in high zenith pills. It seems like their objective is that living corpse instead, and it's unclear what they're up to, Taoist Hu Yan mused in a rather perplexed manner. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. That was exactly what he was wondering as well. In fact, not only was the elderly woman interested in that living corpse, the same seemed to apply to Feng Tiandu as well. The fact that it was situated in such an important place in the High Zenith Palace indicated that it was definitely no ordinary corpse, and the aura that had erupted out of its body after being fed that Origin Void pill was also nothing to be scoffed at. In contrast with the prior commotion, the palace was currently so silent that even the faintest of pin drops could be heard, and the atmosphere was rather oppressive, while the situation had also become quite murky. Right at this moment, 3 of the dragons on the surface of the green pill cauldron lit up in unison with 5-colored light, indicating that another 3 high zenith pills were about to take shape. A vast expanse of golden light gathered in the sky above the Golden Palace once again, forming an enormous golden vortex that was significantly bigger than the 2 previous ones. Everyone immediately turned their attention to the pill cauldron upon seeing this. Han Li cast aside all of his errant thoughts as he focused his gaze intently on the green pill cauldron. 3 silver droplets emerged within the vortex, then fell upon the palace before exploding violently and crashing down as bolts of lightning. Radiant golden light erupted out of the spirit patterns across the entire palace, forming a golden light barrier that kept the silver lightning at bay. The golden and silver light clashed, releasing extremely formidable energy fluctuations that caused the entire palace to tremble violently. However, no one was looking at the pill tribulation unfolding up above. Instead, all of them were staring intently at the pill cauldron, waiting for the next batch of pills to emerge. Just like before, the silver light quickly subsided, while the golden light in the palace also gradually faded. It didn't take long before both had completely faded, and yet another pill tribulation was successfully endured. The 3 dragons on the pill cauldron opened their mouths, and 3 more high zenith pills shot out of the cauldron. Immediately thereafter, 3 additional golden puppets emerged, seemingly from out of nowhere, then caught a high zenith pill each. At the same time, everyone in the palace also rushed toward the 3 pills as quickly as they could. Lights of different colors surfaced over their bodies, before expanding outward to form a series of spirit domains. At this point, everyone knew that it was time to display their true power, and 8 or 9 spirit domains of different colors had emerged within the palace in the blink of an eye. All types of law powers were surging toward Han Li from all directions, instantly slowing him down significantly. Everyone else was also slowed down by the multitude of spirit domains in the area, particularly Han Li's time spirit domain, which had the most significant slowing effect. Han Li looked around momentarily, then abruptly slowed down so that he kept pace with everyone instead of darting ahead. At the same time, all of the gray statues on either side of the palace also pounced forward once again. However, they were also affected by all of the spirit domains in the area, and they were slowed down to an even greater extent than all of the cultivators present. As for the golden formation on the ground, it had just been destroyed by that eruption of gray light from the living corpse's body, so the white flame restriction wasn't triggered. Even though everyone's speed was significantly diminished, the interior of the palace wasn't exactly a massive area, so everyone was still able to reach the 3 golden puppets in the blink of an eye. Radiant golden light erupted out of the 3 puppets' bodies as they each threw a punch in a different direction, unleashing thick arcs of golden lightning that sprang forth in all directions. The lightning attacks unleashed by these golden puppets were quite formidable, posing a threat even to golden immortals, but now that their attacks were scattered, they posed far less of a threat. Hence, no one bothered to dodge the attacks as they briefly adopted some defensive measures before pouncing at the puppets to try and wrench the high zenith pills straight out of their hands. Luo Qinghai harumphed coldly as dazzling blue light erupted out of his body, and once again, his aura swelled to the high zenith stage. The blue staff appeared in his hand amid a flash of blue light, and he swung it through the air, releasing a thick blade of blue light that tore through the oncoming arcs of golden lightning with ease before striking the right arm of one of the golden puppets. A loud crack rang out as the puppet's arm was severed at the elbow, and the high zenith pill in its right hand was instantly sent flying through the air. Taoist Hu Yan, Yun Nai, and the two Blaze Dragon Dao Golden Immortals just so happened to be nearby, and they immediately made a grab for the high zenith pill. A cold look flashed through Luo Qinghai's eyes upon seeing this, and he swept his blue staff through the air once again, unleashing a thick staff projection that swept toward the four of them. All four of them had witnessed the fearsome power of the staff projection, and they immediately shot back in retreat, not daring to stand their ground to try and secure the high zenith pill. Luo Qinghai made no attempt to go after them, merely sweeping a sleeve through the air, instead to release a burst of blue light that drew the high zenith pill into his grasp. Even though Han Li was with Taoist Hu Yan and the others, he played no part in the brief fight over this first high zenith pill. Instead, he abruptly sped up by severalfold, appearing beside the second high zenith pill in the blink of an eye before sweeping a sleeve through the air to release an azure flying sword that hurtled directly toward the puppet. The golden puppet reacted extremely quickly, swinging around before throwing a punch at the azure flying sword. Han Li harumphed coldly as he made a hand seal, and a translucent golden thread shot out of the flying sword to strike the golden puppet. A burst of translucent golden light erupted out of the golden thread to envelop the puppet, and it was instantly stopped cold in its tracks, following which the azure flying sword swept over its body. Just like the other puppet, this one's arm was also severed, and a high zenith pill flew out of its grasp. An ecstatic look emerged in Han Li's eyes as he immediately made a grab for the pill, but right at this moment, several dark red threads of light shot forth through the air from the side, and the elderly woman from the Southern Dawn race was rushing in to stop Han Li. At the same time, the elderly man also rushed at him while releasing two streaks of crimson light, which transformed into a pair of crimson skulls that hurtled toward Han Li from both the left and the right. Instead of taking evasive measures, Han Li opened his mouth to release a burst of golden light, which contained several translucent golden threads, and the oncoming dark red threads were instantly stopped cold in their tracks. The two bursts of formidable law powers clashed violently, causing the nearby space to tremble and rumble incessantly. Han Li was rather surprised to see that these dark red threads were able to oppose his time law threads. At the same time, Jin Tong shot forth through the air from his shoulder, rapidly swelling in size mid-flight before lashing out with its two front legs. Several hundred streaks of translucent golden light were unleashed, forming a golden wave that swept up the two crimson skulls in the blink of an eye, and it didn't take long at all before they were destroyed. Meanwhile, another golden figure emerged from Han Li's body amid a flash of golden light, and it was none other than Taoist Zai, which was holding a pair of azure bamboo cloudswarm swords. The two swords instantly swelled to over 100 feet in length, and arcs of thick golden lightning flashed over their surface as they gave off a devastating aura. Two giant streaks of golden sword chi shot forth, with countless golden lightning runes surging over them, and they swept directly toward the pair of Southern Dawn beings. The two of them were clearly caught off guard by Taoist Zai's abrupt emergence, and they didn't dare to directly withstand the two streaks of formidable sword chi, so they hurriedly took evasive measures. Meanwhile, Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a burst of azure light that swept up the high zenith pill before drawing it up his sleeve in the blink of an eye. The elderly woman faltered slightly upon seeing this, then took a long glance at Han Li before darting back in retreat. The dark red threads also disengaged themselves from their clash against Han Li's time law threads and flew back up her sleeve. Right at this moment, Han Li's voice suddenly rang out beside the elderly woman's ears. "I didn't expect to see you here, fellow Taoist Worm 3. Her expression stiffened ever so slightly upon seeing this, but she didn't slow down in the slightest as she continued flying back in retreat, as did the elderly man with her. Han Li made a beckoning motion to draw his time, law threads, and azure bamboo cloud swarm swords back to himself, and a faint smile appeared on his face as he watched the elderly woman fly away into the distance. At this point, he was all but certain that she was indeed Worm 3. Right at this moment, a resounding boom abruptly rang out nearby, followed by an eruption of black light. Han Li turned to discover that all four vast Flow Palace golden immortals and Nan Keming had been sent flying through the air, while Feng Tiandu and Qi Tianxiao were standing not far away from them. There was a cold sneer on Feng Tiandu's face as he held a high zenith pill in one hand, and two halves of a golden puppet were laying on the ground at their feet. It had only been a few seconds since the three high zenith pills had emerged, and all three of them had already been claimed. Meanwhile, the gray statues were heavily affected by all of the spirit domains in the area, so they were still yet to even reach the pill cauldron. All of the gray puppets began to glow with radiant yellow light, which instantly connected together to form that giant go-board projection again. Individually, these puppets didn't pose much of a threat, but this go-board projection ability that they were collectively able to unleash was extremely formidable, and everyone hurriedly flew back in retreat upon seeing this. Han Li also did the same, releasing a burst of azure light out of his sleeve to sweep up Jin Tong before flying away himself, while Taoist Zai flew back into his body as a streak of golden light. However, right at this moment, two black chains suddenly shot out the space behind him before wrapping themselves around his body, instantly stopping him cold in his tracks. As a result, he was caught within the yellow go-board projection, and he instantly felt as if there were an enormous mountain weighing down upon him. He turned around with some difficulty to find Feng Tiandu watching him with a cold sneer on his face. Even as he was flying back in retreat, there were two black chains protruding out of his sleeve. Han Li gave a cold harumph as radiant golden light erupted out of his body in all directions. At the same time, a resplendent golden wheel appeared behind him. Countless incredibly dense golden ripples surged through the air, spreading outward at an incredible speed, and both Feng Tiandu and Qi Tianxiao were instantly caught within them. Immediately thereafter, both of them were stopped cold in their tracks, and it was as if they had been frozen on the spot. Some of the nearby gray statues and close to half of the yellow go-board projection were also encompassed within the golden ripples, and they were all slowed down to a crawl as well. Luo Qinghai and the others were all astonished to see this, while Yang Qiushan exclaimed in incredulity, "Surely that's not the mantra-treasured axis." As a Tao Lord of the Blaze Dragon Tao, he was naturally aware of the mantra axis scripture, but this mantra-treasured axis was unlike anything that they had ever seen or heard of before. In particular, the hundreds of time Tao runes on the axis was simply mind-boggling to him. Out of everyone present, Taoist Hu Yan was the only one who remained composed in the wake of this revelation, as he had already previously witnessed Han Li's mantra-treasured axis. Basked in the golden light, Han Li was able to fly out of the go-board projection with ease, and he appeared beside Feng Tiandu's duo in the blink of an eye. A hint of alarm and fear flashed through Feng Tiandu's eyes, and a layer of black light surfaced over his body, but it was only able to flash at an extremely low frequency as he fought with all his might to struggle free from the surrounding golden ripples. A layer of gray light appeared over Qi Tianxiao's body as well, releasing a burst of corrosive law powers that began to eat away at the surrounding golden ripples. However, these golden ripples were filled with bursts of incredibly formidable time law powers, and they remained completely unmoved in the face of the opposing law powers. "Is that all you've got, Elder Feng? In that case, it's my turn," Han Li declared in a cold voice, then casually swept a sleeve through the air. Two streaks of azure light shot out of his sleeve, revealing themselves to be a pair of tiny azure swords, and they were able to pierce through the protective spiritual light around the bodies of Feng Tiandu's duo with ease before punching through their glabellas with a pair of dull thumps. A walnut-sized hole appeared in each of their glabellas, but not even a single drop of blood flowed out. The two were still moving slowly along their original trajectories, but the light in their eyes was gradually fading. Han Li's expression remained unchanged as he swept his sleeve through the air once again, releasing a burst of azure light that swept over the remains of the duo, drawing out their storage tools, the immortal treasures that they carried with them, and a pair of nascent souls before carrying them up his sleeve. After that, he made a hand seal, and the mantra-treasured axis behind him vanished into his body at his behest. The surrounding golden ripples also faded, and with that, everything was returned to normal. Feng Tiandu and Qi Tianxiao's bodies fell onto the ground with a dull thud, and it seemed that they had been slain in the blink of an eye. Not long ago, Feng Tiandu and Qi Tianxiao had been arguably the two most threatening figures out of everyone present, but all of a sudden, they had been reduced to a pair of corpses. Everyone drew a collective sharp breath upon seeing this, and they all turned to Han Li with incredulity and wariness in their eyes. Even Taoist Hu Yan was very much taken aback to see this, and he couldn't help but chuckle to himself in amusement. Han Li took a glance at everyone else, and his brows furrowed ever so slightly. Having just displayed his true power to so many people, this could certainly spell trouble for him in the future. However, a sense of pride then welled up in his heart. Back when he first entered the northern glacial Immortal region, he was constantly being hunted by enemies more powerful than himself, so he was perpetually having to be cautious in everything that he did, not daring to let down his guard even for a moment in case he suffered the same fate as before. However, now that he had reached the mid-golden immortal stage and mastered the laws of time, he didn't need to fear any golden immortal cultivator. Furthermore, he had already devised a plan for what he was going to do once he left the infernal frost immortal manor, so he didn't have to worry about these people. After the golden ripples faded, Jin Tong was also able to move freely once again, and she glowered at the pair of bodies on the ground as she protested. "Why did you kill them, uncle? I told you I wanted to kill them myself. I gave you a chance already, but you weren't able to capitalize, so you can't blame me," Han Li replied with a wry smile, and before Jin Tong had a chance to reply, he swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of azure light that swept her up before flying toward the edge of the palace. However, he had only just risen up into the air when he suddenly stopped in his tracks, then cast his gaze toward the green pill cauldron with a peculiar look in his eyes. The cauldron had suddenly begun shaking again amid a loud rumbling sound, and the white flames beneath it suddenly reared up significantly, enveloping the entire bottom half of the cauldron. An incredibly heated aura spread forth in all directions, causing the air temperature in the palace to spike drastically, and the surrounding space shimmered and warped, while the ground near the cauldron began to slowly melt. The gray statues seemed to be quite fearful of these white flames, and they hurriedly sprang back in retreat. As a result, the yellow go-board projection that they had released also faded. At this point, everyone had gotten far away from the cauldron, and the gray statues had also flown back to their original spots on either side of the palace. Everyone else in the distance was also quite shocked to see this, and all of their attention was immediately refocused on the cauldron. The spirit patterns on the cauldron began to release bursts of green light, and the lid of the cauldron was trembling incessantly as thick pillars of white smoke erupted forth in all directions. Dull, thunderous rumbling was also ringing out within the cauldron, but it was quickly able to stabilize itself again. Immediately thereafter, a loud ringing sound rang out from within the cauldron, and the remaining 3 dragons began to glow with radiant 5-colored light, indicating that more pills were about to take shape, much to everyone's elation and befuddlement. Prior to this, the release of each batch of pills had been punctuated by a cooldown interval, but on this occasion, the last 3 pills had only just emerged a moment ago, yet the final 3 pills were already about to take shape. However, everyone then quickly realized that this could be explained by that sudden eruption of white flames from beneath the cauldron. Abruptly fanning the flames during the pill refinement process could indeed accelerate the formation of the pill, but it was an extremely risky maneuver that could easily result in THNE pills being ruined altogether. The world's origin chi above the palace began to churn once again, and countless golden clouds converged to form an enormous vortex. 3 bursts of silver light descended out of the vortex before striking the roof of the palace with tremendous force, and once again, the same clash of golden and silver light began to unfold. A few seconds later, a dull thump rang out in the sky, and all of the silver light faded away, as did the golden light within the palace. Immediately thereafter, everyone pounced at the cauldron again, but this time, they didn't get too close. At this point, everyone had already gained some experience, and they had determined how far a distance they had to maintain from the cauldron in order to avoid triggering the gray statues. Before long, the 3 dragons on the pill cauldron began to glow even more radiantly, following which a high zenith pill flew out of each of their mouths. Everyone immediately converged toward the pill cauldron once again, and just like before, a multitude of spirit domains were summoned to encompass the entire palace. Even though Han Li had already secured 2 high zenith pills up to this point, it certainly couldn't hurt to have more, and he was just about to rush at the cauldron as well when a burst of gray light suddenly shot out of his body before hurtling toward the cauldron. The gray light contained the soul-nurturing burner that the soul fragment was housed in, but the talismans adhered to the burner had already become dull and devoid of luster, clearly having been rendered ineffective. Han Li was very much taken aback to see this, and he hurriedly swept a hand through the air, conjuring a giant golden palm projection that made a grab for the streak of gray light, but all it managed to catch was an afterimage. The streak of gray light was astonishingly fast, reaching the cauldron in the blink of an eye as if through instantaneous teleportation, and it seemed to have been completely unaffected by all of the spirit domains in the area. The streak of gray light swept up the 3 high zenith pills like lightning, then continued to fly onward, appearing above the golden chair just an instant later. All of this had taken place in the blink of an eye, and everyone immediately stopped cold in their tracks with stunned looks on their faces. Immediately thereafter, the soul-nurturing burner abruptly exploded, and the soul fragment drifted out from within. "I knew I could count on you, kid." The soul fragment chortled with glee as it took a glance at Han Li, then flew into the body of the living corpse seated on the golden chair, taking the 3 high zenith pills with it. All of a sudden, 9 golden stone pillars erupted out of the ground near the chair, and a burst of golden light rose up from the stone pillars to form a thick golden light barrier that encompassed the chair and the living corpse within. Bursts of golden light were flashing over the light barrier, giving it an indestructible appearance, while a layer of rippling gray light emerged over the living corpse's body. Even through the golden light barrier, everyone could clearly sense a burst of vitality rising up within the living corpse. Right at this moment, 2 figures arrived on the scene, then landed beside the golden chair. It was the two Southern Dawn race golden immortals, and both of them had excited looks on their faces. All of a sudden, three golden puppets appeared to stand in the way of the two golden immortals, and they each threw a punch, sending three thick bolts of golden lightning hurtling toward the duo. "Piss off!" the elderly woman yelled as a flurry of dark red law threads shot forth, then converged to form a dark red blade of light that swept through the air while giving off a burst of tremendous law power fluctuations. Han Li's pupils immediately contracted slightly upon seeing this. He could sense that this burst of law powers wasn't inferior to his time law powers. The dark red blade of light abruptly sped up, flying through the bodies of the three golden puppets as a dark red shadow, and the three bolts of golden lightning shuddered momentarily before exploding violently. The three puppets were also stopped cold in their tracks before splitting apart at the waist and falling to the ground in a lifeless fashion. The dark red blade of light continued onward without pause, striking the golden light barrier with tremendous force, causing the light barrier to ripple violently, while the entire palace also shuddered. However, just a moment later, the golden light barrier fell still again.